and welcome to episode 6 of RaiderZone the podcast. As we get into the month of December, sports are getting a little wild right now. Obviously, baseball in the swing of off season, NBA just about to start, and then college football and the NFL season's winding down as the playoffs get ready to start within the month. So a lot to talk about here in our first December podcast. I'm Will Brienza. Alongside me today, we have Alexandria Petrone, Riley Sullivan, Ben Johnson Bowers, and Jacob Butar. So a huge panel of Raiders here today. 5 of us just getting ready to jump into some action. So we'll start with the MLB. Free agency starting to heat up a little bit, not a lot, but we have 4 big signings, and then obviously ballots are beginning to be counted for the 2021 MLB Hall of Fame. So we'll start with free agency. Trevor May, the relief pitcher from Minnesota, will be on the move as he heads to the Big Apple, signs a 2-year contract with the Mets. Ben, I'll start with you. How big is this addition to the Mets bullpen, and how big of a start is this for Steve Cohen and his career and tenure with the Mets?
I think this is a solid pickup period at 3.86 ERA last year. I don't think this is going to knock it out of the park for them as far as their rotation goes and their pitching room. But I think it should be solid, but I don't think it's going to put them any closer to competing.
Okay. Alex?
Yeah, I kind of agree. As far as the bullpen, I think it's a huge upgrade for the Mets. But I think it's always been one thing. Pitching is one thing that they've always been kind of a need for. So I don't think they should stop the hunt with Trevor May. I think it's definitely a great upgrade, but they should still continue the hunt just to keep their pitching up and running.
Yeah, I look at this. Obviously, the rotation has been pretty stout for the Mets over the past few years when you have DeGrom on top. Guys like Syndergaard, they re-signed Stroman this offseason. Steven Matz is still there. Seth Lugo. The bullpen, they added some pieces last year in Edwin Diaz and Urias Familia, and both of them didn't play as well as they had prior. And then they also have Dylan Betances, which a lot of people forget about. So if all 4 of those guys, including Trevor May, can pitch to their potential, they probably have one of the best bullpens in baseball now. But after the drop-off from Diaz, Familia, and even Betances last year, it's going to be interesting to see what that bullpen does. So I think May is a huge addition to your contract, and he'll be an even bigger addition if the other 3 guys play as well as we know they can. So that'll take us to another pitching signing. Mike Minor signs a 2-year contract with the Royals after an atrocious 2020 season where he played for 2 teams. I know it's kind of weird to think about in a 60-game season, any player playing for 2 teams. But Mike Minor was dealt to the A's at the trade deadline, and that didn't help him at all. 2020 was just bad for him. Hoping to get a restart with the Royals. He pitched there 1 year before. Is this a good signing for the Royals? Does he help the struggling rotation? Or is Minor just too old at this point, and last year's a flash of what we're going to see again? Alex, I'll start with you.
I think Kansas City is honestly picking up. Between Mike Minor, I know he's getting older, but he still has skill. And I think between that and what we're going to talk about next, I think Kansas City is going to pick up some major talent.
Okay. Ben?
If he can return to the form he's had for most of his career, maybe. But he had a 5.56 ERA last year, which is atrocious. If he can return to get that back down into the 3s, into the 3 to 4 range, I think it could be a solid pickup for them. But I think there's a lot of holes in Kansas City to fill besides this.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if Kansas City is going to try to do what they did with him back in 2017, which would probably make more sense. Obviously, Kansas City's pitching rotation isn't that great, but maybe make him a bullpen guy again. In 2017 with the Royals, he played 65 games, had 6 saves, a 2.55 ERA out of the pen, won 6 games. So maybe that's what you do with him. Had 2 decent years in Texas, and then, like you said, last year, through 7 starts, 0-5 with a 5.6 ERA. Gets shipped to Oakland, plays 5 games, goes 1-1 with a 5.48, so didn't get much better at all with Oakland. So maybe it was just an off year. 2020 was a weird year for everybody. Maybe he took it hard. But obviously, I have a feeling Kansas City's going to explore bullpen options for him. And again, like I said, Kansas City's rotation's not the greatest either, so he'd obviously definitely fit somewhere in there as well. So like Alex alluded to, sticking with the Royals, Carlos Santana's on the move. Signed a 2-year, $17 million contract with the Royals to stay in the American League Central. Ben, are you surprised by this signing?
A little bit, because Kansas City's not a good ball club. He would have been better off staying in Cleveland, which Lord knows what you're going to get on a yearly basis now, and especially with Lindor looking like he's going to be traded in the very immediate future. I mean, if you're going to leave Cleveland, why not try and go to a team that looks like they're going to be at least going to the playoffs? So I'm kind of surprised by this.
Alex, surprised by this signing?
Yeah, kind of surprised. I think more disappointed, though, because obviously he was good with the Indians. I agree with Ben, though. I mean, if you're going to leave, go with a team that has at least a chance for the playoffs. But I guess if the Indians did not show interest in having him come back, but the Royals did, I mean, you have to do what you have to do to keep playing. But a little surprised, more disappointed, I'd say.
I think it was a money thing at this point. The Royals were willing to offer $8.5 million a year. Indians were probably offering about $5 million a year, knowing the Indians front office. And it's also more surprising for me in the fact that the Royals have Hunter Dozier, Ryan O'Hearn, and Ryan McBroom, 3 first basemen on the depth chart. And O'Hearn and Dozier have proved that they're decent everyday starters. So maybe Santana is plugged into DH, but then you're getting into the Jorge Soler. Your 3 best players on your team are literally the positions that Santana plays. So just in that standpoint, didn't make sense for me. Well, I shouldn't say 3 best players, because their best players went Merrifield. But 3 of your 4 best players play first, third, and DH, and you sign a first baseman for $8.5 million a year. That's what didn't make sense to me. So we'll see what they do with him, but I was surprised by this for sure. I didn't think he'd stay with Cleveland just for the money thing, but I definitely thought he'd go to a contender or somebody that at least would need him immediately. I just don't know where his role is or what it's going to be, and I look forward to seeing where Kansas City plugs him in. But in my opinion, this is a bad signing for the Royals. Save that $8.5 million, go out and find another starting pitcher or maybe an outfielder, but they went after him and they got him. So Santana's on the move, but he'll stay in the Central. And then the last big signing of the week, Adam Eaton signs a 1-year deal with the White Sox. Ben, I'll start with you. Will he provide a good veteran presence to this young, talented team?
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy who's been in the league for quite some time. Broke into the majors back in 2012, so he's got a lot of experience up in the big leagues. So he'll bring that experience with him, and I think that'll definitely benefit him. From a playing perspective, I don't know if they're going to get that much from him. I mean, the man, he's a career 282 hitter. He's only cracked 300 twice in his career, and the last time was 2018. So offensively, they're not getting much, but I think that veteran presence is really where the value of this signing comes in.
Alex?
Yeah, I agree with everything that Ben said. I mean, I think it can't hurt them. I think it'll definitely benefit them in some way. Some areas more so than others, like you said. I think the veteran aspect had some value to it, but yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think it's more of like a Nick Swisher signing for the Indians, kind of like a veteran cheerleader, because he plays center field. You have Robert. Then you also have Eloy Jimenez in left field. In right field, you have Nomar Mazara. So there's really no need for an outfielder. I think it's literally just for that the veteran presence that Adam Eaton would bring to the White Sox, because the 3 players I just did name are all around the age of 23 to 25. So just a young team, and Eaton will eat up $8 million, or I believe it is, just so he can help these young guys out, develop, and get the White Sox over that hump, not lose in the first round. So moving on to the MLB Hall of Fame, as Brendan DeVitti joins us. 25 ballots have been counted, reported as of yesterday. So that's 7% of the ballots. Again, 75% is the magic number. That's what you need to get into the Hall of Fame. Right now, sitting over 50% of the 25 ballots, Barry Bonds has been on 67%, along with Roger Clemens. Scott Rowland's on 63% yeses. Kurt Schillig, 59.3%. Todd Helton, 55.6%. And Omar Vizquel got nearly 52% through 25 ballots. There's a lot more ballots left to count. As I said, only 7% of these ballots have been counted. And then 7 players so far have not received a vote at all. A lot of them first-year guys, the Shane Victorinos, the Barry Zitos, and those guys that we were talking about last week. So, Brendan, I'll let you start since you just joined us here. Any surprises thus far in the MLB voting? Obviously, nobody's at that 75% of ballots, but as more come in, we expect people to make the Hall of Fame this year. But are there any surprises that you see through the top 6 thus far, and the 7 players not getting any votes?
Yeah, definitely surprised that Bonds and Clemens are as high as they are. It's looking like they might actually have a chance to actually make the Hall of Fame now. It obviously shows that a lot of the baseball writers who are old school traditionalists are coming around maybe and saying that, you know what, you've been on the ballot this long, we've kept you on this long, just put you in at this point. Mm-hmm. I'm for it. Might as well. They do have the numbers. They do have all those stats. You can't take those away from them. So it is good to see that they are looking like, it looks like they're only 9% away from making it. A long ways to go, it looks like. But, along with Schilling, and I think, Omar Vizquel as well, our Cleveland guy, at 51% in his 4th year. That's promising as well, that he'll eventually, maybe not this year, but next year, get into the Hall of Fame.
Ben.
Looking at this, that's wild that there's 7 players with 0%. I mean, that's pretty tough for those guys because they don't get much more. They don't get another shot at this, which is tough. But I mean, we could have a discussion about how baseball probably should change how they do this. Because I don't know if I agree with 10 years of eligibility. I mean, if you're not going to get in, you're not going to get in. But, I mean, it looks like Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens should be close to knocking on the door here in their 9th year, only one more shot at it after this. And then Omar Vizquel, I agree with Brendan, 51.9%. Within 25% there. If he doesn't get in this year, he looks like he should be in good position to get in the next year or two.
Mm-hmm. Alex, any surprises thus far?
No, I agree with the guys. I'm for Omar. I think if he doesn't make it this year, I'm definitely really hoping he makes it next year. But kind of with what they were saying about Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, they're in their 9th year. I think they're really close to making it for this year, especially with only 1 year left. But, yeah.
I mean, if you're Omar Vizquel, probably the greatest defensive player to ever play the sport, you're going to get in. You got to put Barry Bonds in, man. The greatest power hitter to ever play the sport. So, I like everything holding in so far. Kind of surprised by Scott Rowland, I'm not going to lie. He's taken quite the surge through the first 25 ballots up into that 3rd spot. Last year, I think he was in 6 of these 6 players. So interested to see. Maybe it's just the first 25 guys love Scott Rowland, but we'll see. But that will do it for the MLB talk as we jump into a little bit of college basketball now. We're not going to talk a lot about it. College basketball, a couple weeks in now to the 2020-21 season. Jacob, I'll start with you. What are thoughts on some of the teams so far? Any surprising outcomes?
I think it's still way too early to tell who's contending or not. But I look at Gonzaga; they're a very deep team. I like what I'm seeing so far with them, and they have experience with Mark Few as their head coach. I really like Jalen Suggs as their point guard. He's a really good and young, talented freshman. But also really impressed with Iowa and Luka Garza in particular. He's outscoring teams at halftime by himself. That's absolutely ridiculous. I think he's really in contention for National Player of the Year right there. But I'm really surprised to be seeing teams like Duke, Kansas, North Carolina, and especially Kentucky really struggle early on because they are the blue bloods of college basketball. You normally don't see them struggle. And I also want to shout out Fort Hays State here. Fort Hays State is a Division II school that did not even win a game in D2. They were 0-4, I believe, going into playing Kansas State on the road without their head coach. They pulled off the upset of the century that probably nobody's going to really talk about. But shout out to those guys. That's probably the most surprising outcome this year. But ultimately, I think college basketball is going to really struggle this year to see who's good and who's not with all the COVID protocols. I just think it's going to be a really weird year. And I hope it gets all the way through, but I'm having my doubts as to if college basketball is even going to go all the way through this year.
Okay. Ben?
I mean, surprises so far. Obviously Kansas State getting upset by a D2 school, that's got to be up there because that's, virtually unheard of. But in Illinois, I think one of the big surprises is the Big Ten early on. Playing really well, 4-1, and looking like they could be a team that can do a lot of damage once we get to March next year and get to the NCAA tournament. But Gonzaga, experienced. Mark Few has one of the highest winning percentage. He might have the highest winning percentage. I'd have to check the stats on that, of all the active coaches in the NCAA Division I. So I think that, his experience, it's a very good team. That's a very good team, well-coached team. They'll make a push to the Final Four. Iowa with Luka Garza. Garza should probably be the National Player of the Year, and I'll predict that right now he's going to be National Player of the Year. This dude is on another level this year. He probably could have won it last year, but this year for sure he's going to win it, and I think he's going to propel Iowa to the Final Four. Other than that, I think this is going to be a weird year. There's going to be games canceled, and you see some of the Blue Bloods, Duke, 2-2, struggling right now. Kentucky's struggling a bit because they're a very young team. So we'll see. I think this is a year for anyone to make a push.
Alex? O'Reilly, sorry. There we go.
Yeah, I was initially surprised to see that, your most common conference to be dominating the top 5 or top 10 this early on in the year. The ACC really wasn't in the discussion too much in the top 10. And I was really surprised to see the Big Ten and how much they're being respected as a conference in basketball this year. That's not something you really see. But, starting in the top 5, you have Iowa and Michigan State. Not far behind them is Illinois. Wisconsin's in the discussion, Ohio State, even Rutgers. The Big Ten is really a good basketball conference this year, so it's surprising to see them get this much love in the top 25 this early on. And then Ben touched on it a little bit. To see that Duke has lost to not one but 2 Big Ten opponents so far tells me, how legitimate that conference is this year. And that's just some things that stand out to me early on in NCAA men's basketball.
Brendan.
Yeah, I'm actually a huge college basketball fan. I've been watching it pretty much all day, every day since it started the Wednesday of Thanksgiving. But yeah, to see, Iowa's been on the rise for a while here. They have a great coach, and Luka Garza makes them better. Jordan Bohannon. They just hit 17 threes last night against North Carolina. They definitely shoot the lights out and have the ability to go in the March and that first weekend in April. Baylor is a team that a lot of people should be focused on. They run up and down the court like crazy. They played number 6 Illinois, which was supposed to be a highly contested game, and the Illini were like within 10 and 8. Pretty much the whole game just couldn't close the gap because Baylor is so good, and they just keep on extending that lead. So those are definitely a couple teams to watch out for. And everyone's mentioning the Blue Bloods not playing as great as they are usually expected to. That's just because the landscape of college basketball is kind of changing. If you look at all the draft picks in the NBA draft, they're mostly all from football schools. So Blue Bloods aren't getting as good of players anymore, I don't think. You take a look at the Big 12, Big 10. They're kind of contending for the championships now. But as far as like outcomes go, Richmond, they beat Kentucky. They could definitely be a Cinderella team this year. They've been in talks, for the tournament here and there. Creighton is playing well as well. Virginia's kind of shaky. The start of the season, they lost to San Francisco and then almost lost to Kent State. Kent State took Virginia into overtime a few days ago. So who knows about Virginia, the defending champion still from 2 years ago. But yeah, it's early on. But college basketball is just so fun to watch because you get all these teams that you don't usually hear about, contending with the Blue Bloods.
Yeah, and so for me, Riley, you touched on what I wanted to talk about, the Big Ten playing really good basketball. One thing I always look forward to is the Big Ten ACC Challenge when it comes to early on in the season. And right now, after yesterday, the Big Ten has a 5-0 lead. Iowa beat North Carolina by 13. Ohio State, Notre Dame, that was a game that I was excited to watch. I didn't think Notre Dame had a chance at all, but it actually ended up being a very good game. If you guys didn't watch it, I recommend trying to find it somewhere to rewatch it because it was a very good game, down to the wire. Penn State comes out and upsets number 15 Virginia Tech by 20, 75-55. Illinois beat Duke, and then Rutgers beat Syracuse. And then tonight, the last two of the ACC Big Ten Challenge, Indiana at Florida State, and Michigan State Virginia actually was canceled. So there's only one tonight, which is unfortunate because that Michigan State Virginia game was probably going to be one of the better ones. But who knows? The Big Ten could go sweep and go 6-0 over the ACC, and that proves what Riley was talking about. The Big Ten might be the premier basketball conference this year, and the ACC might be taking a step back and being the sidecar of the Big Ten this year. It is still early, so things could definitely change. But seeing 3 teams in the top 10, I think it is 6 total in the top 25, maybe 7 from the Big Ten. And Penn State doing that yesterday, maybe they'll get their chance to crack the top 25 here soon. So, so far, Big Ten, fun conference to watch. But overall, upsets are happening, and 2020 is a crazy year, so I don't expect anything less than all sports to be crazy, as we've come to see in a lot of what we've talked about over these past 5 weeks. So now we'll continue with the theme of basketball. We'll go to the NBA, and 13 days, guys. We're under 2 weeks till tip-off, so I know Jacob's pumping his fist. He's excited. He's salivating at the mouth right now, just itching to get into the NBA season here. So we'll jump in a little bit of recent news. LeBron comes out and talks about how Kyrie's statement on KD being his first clutch teammate hurt him. And, that hurt me too, honestly. But, Jacob, I always like starting with you first on basketball because we know how much you love it. What are your thoughts on this situation?
Kyrie Irving, all he wants in life is just attention. And that just bothers me so much. Like, all he does is open his mouth and just say stupid things. And then the media always reports the things. And then he always blames the media for twisting his words. Just don't come out and say something stupid, really. Because, let's see, he's played with LeBron. Yes, LeBron's obviously the greatest player he's ever played with. Will be the greatest player he's ever played with as well because he's clearly better than Kevin Durant. He's also played with clutch players. I know Kevin Love doesn't get a lot of credit, but Kevin Love ain't no scrub. Like, he's good. He's a clutch player. In Boston, you play with guys like Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. Those are clutch guys, too. And last time I checked, Kyrie, when you were in Boston, you didn't even play in the postseason the year that your team made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. So Kyrie has no room to talk about this. Yes, he hit the shot in Game 7, but ever since then, he's only played in the one postseason with the Cavs and then in one postseason with Boston. And LeBron, ever since then, took the Cavs back to the finals when Kyrie left. Obviously had the down year with his injuries in Los Angeles. And then, of course, he wins the chip this year. So LeBron's clearly the most clutch player. LeBron shouldn't be hurt because he should just be used to by now hearing Kyrie Irving just say stupid things. Kyrie, all he wants is attention because he knows he'll never be clearly as good as LeBron James.
Love it. Brendan, your thoughts?
Yeah, sometimes I don't know what Kyrie Irving wants in a team. If he honestly thinks Kevin Durant is better than LeBron James, I don't know. He obviously hasn't played enough with Durant. How can you play with LeBron James for 3 years and win a championship and yet still think he's not clutch enough? I don't know. He like Jacob said, he has said some things over the course of his career that I don't understand. I heard someone say that he is putting stuff in writing now that so that the media can't twist it. But okay, if you're going to put it in writing, make sure it sounds sane. I mean, like, I don't
find an editor, get
doesn't
it
make
published.
right. Like I still love the guy. He brought us a championship. A lot of respect for his talent. He's top 5 point guard in the league. I don't get this comment though. I mean, it's also crazy because we never saw any off the court craziness between LeBron and Kyrie. It always felt and looked like they were best of friends,
One championship.
which helped them win a championship. All this stuff, post Cleveland, post the LeBron and Kyrie era that we're hearing now about them doesn't make sense, and it's kind of hurts a Cavs fan to see, but definitely kind of ruins what we had.
Riley.
Yeah, my thoughts on the situation are I know that LeBron might be really hurt, but I'm just going to give him a piece of advice. He can take his 4 fingers and put 1 ring on, 2 rings on, 3 rings on, and 4 rings on, and wipe his tear right off his face and say, "It's okay, Kyrie, I'll make you pay for it." So that's my thoughts on the situation. Kyrie can say whatever he wants, but at the end of the day, LeBron has 4 rings on his finger. Kyrie has 1 with the Cavs, and not much else to say outside of that. So I'm sorry. I know you're hurt, LeBron, but just wipe it off. Be resilient. We know that you have some thick skin. You're really one of the best players in the world, if not the best player we've ever seen. So make him pay for it. That's all I have to say.
Ben.
That's crazy. I mean, like, this dude left Cleveland and became a head case. So hats off to Ty Lue for somehow managing to keep this under control, and David Blatt before that, and all the coaches before that. So I don't know how they contain this. This dude is an absolute head. I mean, this dude, and it's never his fault. It is never his fault. He always somehow blames it on the media. Now he's not doing. I mean, you're a professional athlete. It's expected that you're going to go talk to the media. Like, that's part of your job. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And it's like what are you trying to accomplish by putting this out there? I mean, you're just going to motivate LeBron more.
Yeah, he's feeding the fire with gasoline.
I mean, come on, like, this is so blatantly stupid. LeBron, maybe he's not the clutchest player of all time, but, like, he's hit plenty of big shots in his career, and you played with him. Yep. Kevin Durant might be a better pure shooter from the 3, but overall as a player, he's not better.
Yeah,
this is ridiculous.
They showed a stat between LeBron and KD's final 2 minutes in playoff games, and LeBron's shooting percentage, 3-point percentage, blow KD out of the water, which I was kind of surprised by in the aspect of 3-point because KD is the better shooter, but when it comes down to it, LeBron does not miss. And then LeBron obviously has hit more game-winning shots in his career when playoffs go, and then, like Riley said, even KD, he has more rings than, and KD played on one of the most stacked teams in NBA history. So if I'm LeBron, like Riley said, just wipe it with the 4 rings. Just they can take it and repeat. I mean,
Lakers Nets finals.
I'm still.
And LeBron shows Kyrie what he's missing.
I think the Lakers can definitely get back, but I don't know about the Nets. I'm still worried. Everyone thinks KD's going to come back and be the same old KD. Tearing your Achilles is a really tough injury to come back from 100%. And, I mean, Kyrie's also not been the same since Cleveland. So, I mean, to say that the Nets are a shoo-in is – the East is really up for grabs because I don't think there's really any team that is stacked, in my opinion. I mean, the Bucks, they still have Giannis. I just feel like every team has one big player and a supporting cast. Nobody has that big 2, big 3. You know what I mean? The Raptors have Siakam. So it's going to be interesting to see because Chris Middleton, I wouldn't consider Chris Middleton a superstar. So you got Giannis, then you got your supporting cast. The Raptors, you got Siakam, I guess, is their best player, supporting cast. You got Butler in your supporting cast. Sixers, Embiid, maybe Simmons can be considered up. He's getting close, maybe. But like I said, there's no team there that has a LeBron and AD. So the East, I think, is going to be like Miami made it last year. I think it's anybody's. I think it's anybody's conference.
Yeah, and Brooklyn, which you got to consider too, they're going to have that learning curve at first because Kyrie and Kevin Durant have never played together. So
two biggest egos in sports too.
When LeBron came back to Cleveland with playing with Kyrie and Kevin Love, there was that big learning curve too. They weren't very good in the beginning.
No.
Even when LeBron went to Miami, they weren't very good in the beginning either. So they're going to have to learn how to play off each other. So that could maybe hurt them. But yeah, I'd love to see LeBron give it to Kyrie in the finals. That would just be cherry on top right there.
Gets a block on Kyrie, but just stares him down. Oh, I'm not clutch. What about my block against Golden State? So we'll move on to the free agency now. A couple more moves happen. We'll put the two LA ones together. So LeBron signs a 2-year extension with the Lakers worth $85 million, while AD finalizing a 5-year extension with the Lakers worth $190 million. So with these ones, Brendan, I'll start with you. Which one is a bigger signing for the Lakers when it talks about when you think about like productivity from these two guys? Which one of these signings is bigger for the Lakers? Obviously, both huge for the Lakers, but which one's bigger?
Right. If you're talking about just winning the finals within the next 2-3 years, definitely LeBron, because you're going to get a few rings here within the next 4 years just by having both LeBron and AD. But if you're talking about contending and being relevant for a very long time, it's Anthony Davis, because LeBron has said that he's playing with Anthony Davis right now to prepare him in order to be the superstar of LA for the foreseeable future, and to hand him the keys to the car. So the Lakers always have a stacked roster right now, but when LeBron leaves, they're still going to have Anthony Davis and stay a finals contender. So yeah, both obviously huge contract extensions. But if you're talking about contending and being relevant for a very long time and not having the downfall that they had when Kobe left, signing Davis for 5 years, and after those 5 years could be longer and extend that even more. Definitely Anthony Davis signing again.
Riley, which one's bigger?
I really do think that the Anthony Davis contract is bigger for the Lakers. LeBron made it a point to, make it public that when he signed this 2-year deal, his son is going to be 18 years old and eligible to be drafted into the NBA once he is done with this 2-year extension. So I think it's possible maybe that LeBron leaves after these 2 years. I think that the Lakers get a championship with LeBron and AD both on the roster these next 2 years. But I do think that Anthony Davis, because his contract is a 5-year contract, which really is going to act more like a 4-year, I think the length is really what makes it more valuable.
Ben.
I think Anthony Davis, I agree. I think that's more valuable because LeBron's only got so much more time in the league, but AD can continue to be that cornerstone for the franchise once LeBron leaves or retires with the Lakers, whichever ends up happening. So I think that's the bigger one, keeping AD locked in there. And then AD becomes the franchise leader, tracks the next starter to play with him once LeBron's gone. You just keep the ball rolling.
Jacob.
I'd have to say LeBron's the bigger signing here because what I'm thinking on this is he already had 2 years left on his contract. He adds 2 more years, so that's 4 years. Anthony Davis's contract length is 5 years, but after his 4th year, he can opt out. What I was thinking with this, because there was many talks that Anthony Davis would only sign a 2-year contract, opt out, and then end up getting a bigger contract down the line. But I think with LeBron signing, that gave Anthony Davis confidence that, hey, I have another guy I can play with in LeBron and really contend with. So that's what ultimately led Anthony Davis to signing. And I'm not fully convinced, though, that Anthony Davis is going to stay in Los Angeles after LeBron leaves, because he's hinted at, when he's asked about going home playing in Chicago, he's hinted at that he has somewhat of an interest in Chicago. So I think there's the potential that he leaves and goes to Chicago. I personally would not do that, and I don't know necessarily if he will, but I'm not fully convinced that he's going to stay in Los Angeles once LeBron leaves. The fact that LeBron's going to be there for the duration of Anthony Davis's new contract extension, I think that's what gives him the confidence to really commit to that length. But really, I think that without LeBron's commitment, AD's not as committed to staying with the Lakers for a long term, because like I said, he could have gotten more money if he only signed a shorter deal. But I think since the fact that LeBron's back for at least 4 years now, that AD has the confidence that he can contend for at least the next 4 years with LeBron.
Yeah, and obviously when you talk about age, LeBron's being taken to the 40s with this contract extension, 80 to 32. So when you talk about longevity, keeping AD in the talks of a Lakers roster spot for 5+ years is bigger. But when you're talking about who's going to have the bigger impact, as long as those two are together, which is why, again, I agree with Jacob, having LeBron for 4 years and AD for 4 years now gives you 4 more chances at a ring. I think it's really close, but I'm giving LeBron the edge just because he's that kind of player you put on any roster, they're at least making the playoffs. I mean, you could put him on the Knicks, and they're making the playoffs next year. Not saying they're going to be top seed, but I'm sure he could take them 36-36 and get to the Eastern, get the 8th seed in the East, you know? So, overall, I think LeBron's that bigger thing because AD in New Orleans, there were off years. So I think AD down the line, if the Lakers can add another big piece when LeBron is finally done with LA, that's when you get AD to stick around too. But I think AD is on his way out after LeBron leaves as well. I agree with Jacob in that sense. So, but nonetheless, I mean, big signings for the Lakers. They kept the 2 guys they needed to keep for longer. So kudos to them. Now, a big trade goes through. Westbrook sent to D.C. to play for the Wizards, and the Thunder Rockets get John Wall and a first-round pick. So, point guard swap, and then the Rockets get a first-round pick, kind of a knock to John Wall saying, hey, you weren't worth it. But obviously the injuries over the past few years have knocked down his value. Guys, who won this trade? Wizards or Rockets? Jacob, I'll start with you.
You know, this is just a weird trade for me. I think that both teams are still ultimately kind of put in an awkward position because John Wall's contract, I think, has proven to be absolutely horrible because he signed that Supermax and he's coming off 2 catastrophic injuries. So that's a huge burden. You don't know what John Wall you're going to get. Russell Westbrook, not necessarily saying at the time he wasn't worth his extension, but he's on the decline now slightly. So he's kind of in a bad contract situation. But ultimately, I think Washington wins this trade slightly, just because I would take Westbrook over Wall just based off the injury concerns. And I don't know, especially in Houston, if you're trying to convince James Harden, if just getting John Wall back is really enough to really convince James Harden. I know there's reports out there that Harden wanted to play with John Wall, but like how I said, he's coming off 2 horrible injuries. You really don't know what version you're going to get of him. But what I find crazy now too, though, is Houston ultimately gave up on Chris Paul, right? Chris Paul, he didn't necessarily play very good in his last year, but now he's really playing well again. They ultimately gave him up and 2 first-round picks basically for basically a super injured John Wall, which just blows my mind at just how crazy the NBA is in that sense. But I really do think that it's risky for both teams, but I ultimately think Russell Westbrook's going to pan out better in Washington than John Wall will in Houston.
Yeah. Riley.
Yeah, Jacob really said a lot of what I wanted to say. I think that the Wizards get way more athletic. I think John Wall obviously hasn't even been on the court, so you've been missing the athleticism there. But even when he was on the court, it was obvious he had lost something after his terrible injuries. And then for the Rockets, you get a complete question mark at point guard who knows if he's going to be able to drive to the basket anymore. I mean, his ankles are done, his knees are not in good shape, and he hasn't been on a basketball court much for 2 years. So I think the Wizards are obvious winners here. And for Houston, they better get something good in return for James Harden if they decide to trade him, because I really don't think they can get much. I don't think the foundation of that team is nearly as good as it has been in the past.
Brendan?
Yeah, definitely Washington wins this trade. Just the video the other day, seeing Westbrook and Bradley Beal work out together. Looks like they're having a blast already, day one. And this trade leaves Houston in shambles. John Wall, I think, is the most overrated point guard in the league. And now James Harden isn't happy where he's at with a new head coach and a new GM. He wants out, either going to Brooklyn or Philadelphia. I think that they will make that trade, because who wants to play with an unhappy James Harden? The team is not going to look the same as it was, and it's now not a finals contender or even a Western Conference finals contender. So I think you definitely put Russell Westbrook in a place where he's happy now. We'll see. I just don't know just yet. But I think the Wizards, definitely not a contender, but they'll definitely be playing much better with Bradley Beal and Westbrook.
And Ben.
Man, I gotta say Washington wins this trade because Westbrook's clearly better. He's a better player than John Wall. John Wall's really just a great athlete. I agree he's kind of overrated with what Brendan said there. And look, Houston's going into a rebuild. Like, I've been saying this for a minute now. Like, they need to just go into a full rebuild, and I think that's what's happening here. So, you got an all-star level point guard to pair with Bradley Beal. It seems like things are starting off pretty well in Washington following that trade. And then Houston, James Harden clearly wants out. I think Houston needs to just trade him, and for any team that does trade for him, whether it's the Sixers or whoever, they need to be careful and not do what the Knicks did with Carmelo Anthony, where you basically give up the house, and then you can't even contend or even be competitive in your conference after acquiring the big star.
Yeah, I think definitely the Wizards won. I agree. Westbrook Beal seems like it's going to be a much better dude to watch than a disgruntled Harden if he does stay and hurt John Wall. And you got to think Washington also added Denny in the draft. That was a big pickup. They still have Thomas Bryant. They have some really young talent, honestly. So Washington could be a team that we see maybe take a step into that 8th seed, make the playoffs this year, adding Russell Westbrook. That remains to be seen. But I'm definitely more excited to watch Westbrook and Beal. I think Beal is probably happier with this deal. Beal kind of been the carry it all for the Wizards as of late, and now he's getting a little load off his shoulder, and that's, if Harden's out, you got to imagine that's up there when you talk about one of the best backcourts in basketball. So I think the Wizards won this trade. Yes, they give up a first-round pick, but Westbrook definitely has a lot more left in the tank than John Wall does, and with Harden being out, Houston's kind of just trying everything at this point, and it's not working. So we'll continue with Houston as James Harden says yesterday that he's open to a trade with the 76ers. A few weeks back said he wanted the Nets was his top destination landing spot that he wanted. Open to the Sixers trade. Kind of looks like he wants out of the West at this point. Wants to go to an East team that's ready to win. So, Ben, I'll start with you. Is Harden traded soon? And if so, where do you think he's going? Ben? Can't hear you. There we go.
All right, now we're better. All right. Yeah, I think Harden's getting traded soon. He reportedly, he finally did report about a day or two ago, but he clearly doesn't want to be there anymore. And it seems like Philly is a team that he wants to play for, so I think he's probably going to end up being a Sixer. I just caution the Sixers not to give up the house in order to get him. Because if you do that, then you can't even be competitive in the East or even try to get to the conference finals. But I think Philly's probably where he's going.
Brendan.
Yeah, it's sounding more and more like he'll go to Philadelphia. I think that definitely helps the 76ers case. You put him with Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, Danny Green, Seth Curry, a good shooter. It definitely helps them have a more veteran presence on that team, and will help their front court especially. I don't know if it makes them a contender in the East because I don't know who the contender is, and I guess Milwaukee for right now. But yeah, it definitely has to get out of Houston. That's a problem that I don't think the Rockets saw coming. So yeah, I would have liked them to go to Brooklyn, but it's looking more and more like Philadelphia.
Riley.
I don't really know where James Harden is going to go. Obviously, the two destinations everyone has heard of is Brooklyn and Philadelphia, but I don't think Brooklyn has enough to trade for him. I don't think that they have the players that are attractive to Houston to make a deal like that, and I don't think that they're willing to trade the draft capital, or if they even have the draft capital that Houston would want. And then if you look at Philadelphia, I don't think that they have the existing contracts on their roster to trade for James Harden without giving up a guy like Ben Simmons or Joel Embiid, which would basically be a conversation ender for me if I'm Daryl Morey in Philadelphia. So it's a difficult situation, but I think it might be one of those things where we didn't know that Paul George was going to get traded to OKC, but they were the sleeper team. They were hiding in the dark, and they ended up landing him. I think we're going to see a team come out of the blue really fast, and they're going to end up being the suitors for James Harden. I just don't know who it's going to be.
Jacob.
Yeah, I look at it like this. Brooklyn's going to have to get rid of guys like Spencer Dinwiddie, Karis LeVert, Jared Allen, guys like that, and draft capital. So I don't really see him going to Brooklyn. Philadelphia, possibly. They'd probably almost definitely have to get rid of Ben Simmons. His contract's about, I believe, $25 million. So that almost matches James Harden's, not entirely. So Ben Simmons would probably have to go to Houston. I don't know if Philly's willing to do that. But I also think Houston can do what a lot of teams have done with their superstars who have asked for trades in the past. Like, if we look in the past, a guy like Kawhi Leonard, for example, he went and traded to LA, and San Antonio said, no, we're sending you to Toronto. Paul George, like Riley mentioned, he wanted to go from Indiana to LA as well. He ends up stopping in OKC, just like how Melo went from New York to OKC. A bunch of these stars, they really ask for trades to particular places, and they normally don't get it. So I really can see James Harden ending up in a spot that's not on his list. And the team that I'm eyeing is really the Boston Celtics, kind of, because they're contenders. They have a young guy in Jaylen Brown, and they have significant role players like Daniel Tice, Romeo Langford, Grant Williams. Don't know if that's necessarily enough for Houston, but really, if you look at it, I don't know necessarily if Brooklyn's going to be willing to get rid of all those guys, nor really is Philadelphia going to be willing to give up Ben Simmons. So in that case, Houston might be stuck with this trade. Plus, Boston has a lot of draft picks, so Boston can pile on some draft picks for James Harden. I think it's an interesting landing spot. I'm not necessarily saying he's going to land there. I personally think that he's going to end up on a team that we're not even talking about. But I just don't really see him going to Brooklyn or Philadelphia. But I do definitely think that he needs to be traded from Houston soon.
Yeah, I think he needs to be traded. John Wall came out and said that he is almost certain that James Harden will be playing in Houston this year. So if you want to take that for any grain of salt, maybe the trade won't happen. Obviously, Nets, Sixers, two big ones. The Warriors are reportedly interested after the Klay Thompson injury. I think that'd be a bit ridiculous if they had Curry, Harden, Wiggins, Oubre, Draymond Green, and James Wiseman, but that's just my opinion. I mean, they've done it before, so why not keep the train rolling? But I don't know where he'll end up. Like you guys made great points. Stars ask for trades, and they almost never end up there. So at this point, you think about using reverse psychology, like, hey, I want to go to the Cavaliers, and maybe they'll send you to Brooklyn. But I honestly think there is a good chance that the front office tries to hold on to Harden for a little bit into the season and see if Silas can tame him and the new first-year head coach with the Rockets. And maybe him and John Wall have a little bit of chemistry there off the get-go, and Harden figures out he wants to stay. If it's not working out, maybe at the deadline it's something that happens. But as far as with the season being 13 days away, I have a feeling Harden's going to be suiting up in the Rockets jersey to start the 2020-21 season. But definitely could see it being a trade deadline thing. if it's not working out, which it probably won't, because if you're disgruntled from the get-go and think this has no chance of working, it's not going to work. So I think Harden's going to be the reason he gets traded, because he's going to try to. But I don't think anything's going to happen in the next 2 weeks. And I could be wrong. That's just my hot take. I mean, we could get a report tomorrow, Harden traded to Orlando Magic for a bag of chips, but only time will tell. So we'll see. No matter what, I think how he's acted this offseason might turn some teams off from him. So that's another thing that we got to look out for, too. Does Brooklyn even want him? Philadelphia kind of seems like that desperate team. Like, James Harden, we'll take him. Like, we'll add him to Joel Embiid. So, I don't know. Philadelphia seemed like that since they said trust the process. It's like just trust the disparity or something. But we'll move on. ESPN releases their projections for this season. In the East, we'll talk about the East first. In the East, they have the Bucks getting the 1 seed, Raptors 2, Heat 3, Sixers 4, Celtics 5, Nets 6, Pacers 7, and the Hawks landing in the 8th spot, with the Wizards and the Magic just looking in from the outside within 3 games of that 8th spot. And then Hornets, Bulls, Knicks, Pistons, and Cavs all to follow. They have the Pistons and Cavs winning 24 games each, the bottom feeders of the Eastern Conference. Brendan, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts on these Eastern Conference projections?
Yeah, and that's really all that they are, right, is projections. Like, I don't see Milwaukee finishing atop the Eastern Conference this year. I think it's either going to be Miami or Boston. The middle pack is really interesting for me within the top 8. Philadelphia, Brooklyn, Atlanta. I don't see Atlanta getting that 8th seed. I think they finished a little higher this year. But yeah, I mean, they all seem on point for me. I think Toronto does finish with a number 2 seed. As far as the bottom goes, I think Cleveland does a little bit better than they did last year. I don't think that they finish even in the bottom 4. I do think that they make a run at that 10-11 spot. Detroit, New York, sure, finished in the bottom in the tank. But yeah, I mean, the Eastern Conference is so interesting to me because you got like 5 teams that can realistically contend for the Eastern Conference title. I think Miami is a real interesting team. Can they keep the momentum going that they just had a little over a month ago going into this season? I think that actually helps them that the season starts like right now. So can they finish in the top 3, top 2? Yeah. But yeah, this is so interesting to me. But again, they're just projections. So,
Riley, thoughts on the Eastern Conference projections?
Yeah, I really think I think the numbers are going to end up being way off. Like, I think these records are just kind of computerized, basic, it's like the horoscopes or whatever, very generalized records on this list. But I think the first 6 or 7 seeds are pretty firmly entrenched in the playoffs. Where things start to get interesting is the 8 and 9 seed. Like Brennan said, I don't see the Hawks making it. I don't think they have enough defense on that roster at all. But I do think the Wizards with Beal and with Russell Westbrook, they're going to have the firepower that it's going to take to secure like that 7 or 8 seed. But other than that, I think things are pretty on par for the Eastern Conference predictions. I think that this list is going to look similar to what's put on here, subject to maybe 1 or 2 slot changes. But the top 3 are going to stay the top 3. The 5 through 7 are going to stay the top 5 through 7, even if they swap a little bit. I think this is a pretty accurate list.
Jacob.
I agree with what both Riley and Brendan are saying somewhat. I like Brendan's take on the Cavs. I'm a huge Cavs guy, so I have my faith in them. But I genuinely do think that they're going to end up being slightly better just because they played really well under JB Bickerstaff, and Andre Drummond seemed to really fit in. So I don't really see them being the last place team. I don't necessarily see them, though, being in like the 9 to 10 conversation, maybe like the 11 to 12, but that's still progress, so we'll take it. But as far as the 8 teams in the playoffs go, I'd have to agree with Riley. I think that that's mostly set. Atlanta, I don't really see them going that much higher than 8 just because of like what Riley said. Their defense is not very good. Trae Young's not good on defense. John Collins really isn't good on defense. They have a lot of offensive firepower, which I think is ultimately going to get them in the playoffs as like a 7 or 8 seed. But I don't really see them being in the 4 to 5 range just yet. And as far as the Wizards go, I think the Wizards could potentially sneak in depending on how Russ and Bradley Beal play with each other. And the top 3, though, I think that Toronto is going to take somewhat of a step back. I had them at 4 because I think that Marc Gasol and Serge Ibaka's losses are kind of going to prove to be a little big for Toronto. So I wouldn't necessarily put them at 2 just yet. But I'd keep my eye on Brooklyn and Philadelphia to potentially be in the top 3. That's a big what if, though, about the cultures that are going to be created. Brooklyn, obviously, with KD, Kyrie, new head coach, and Steve Nash. And Philadelphia with Doc Rivers at the helm. Maybe they get it turned around. But that's really what I'm looking out for in the East. But I think that the 8 teams that are in the postseason right now in these projections are ultimately going to be the 8 teams you see in the postseason.
Ben.
All right, I think Miami's going to do better than 3. I think Miami's probably going to be finishing atop, getting the 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. I don't think Milwaukee will get it. They'll probably finish 2nd or 3rd. Toronto will probably also stay in that top 4. If the Sixers can land James Harden, that could allow them to push up to 1. But as of right now, I agree with them at 4. Boston, I think that's a fair spot. I think Boston's going to drop back a little bit with Kyrie and Hayward gone. So I think that's probably fair. They'll probably be the middle of the pack. Still pretty good because they have probably the best coach in the league in Brad Stevens. Then the Nets you could probably flip a coin if they move up from the 6th spot that they're projected to be at. It all depends on how well KD comes back from his torn Achilles, which since he's more of a shooter, he probably can come back pretty close to where he was before. But it probably won't be exactly the same in terms of his level of play. Kyrie Irving, if he stays healthy, same deal. I mean, who knows if he's going to stay healthy for the full season? Because that started to become a real concern in Boston. Even in Cleveland, he got hurt in college as well. And the Hawks, I think that's fair. They should be competing for that 7-8 spot. Same thing with the Pacers. They could push a little higher, though. They've looked solid without Victor Oladipo. So with him back and healthy, they could make a push. I think the Cavs aren't going to finish in the very dead last spot in the East. I think they can be a 10th place team. Maybe if they get lucky, push for that 8 seed. But I think the Cavs should, because they looked like they were really coming together, really starting to gel with J.B. Bickerstaff once he took over as the interim coach last year. And with the addition of Isaac Okoro,
Somebody's in trouble.
that should give them a good boost defensively. So I think Cavs should move up. Pistons probably stay down there. Hornets, that's a lottery team. Same thing with Orlando. Washington could compete for that 8, maybe 7 seed, because it all depends on how well Westbrook and Beal would kind of gel. But that's how I see the East turning out.
You guys obviously don't do 2K sims. The Hawks will finish in 1st. The Cavs will finish in 8th. I'm kidding. It seems like every 2K sim, that's where they finish. It's always the Hawks first, because all 2K cares about is offense. But no, I agree with everything that was said. The playoff, these 8 teams look like they should be the 8. Wizards really the only team I think outside of the list of 8 that have a chance, and it's just going to be seeding. I agree with Riley. The records, they were funny to see. I don't think Milwaukee's going 20 games over 500 in a 72-game season. I don't think anybody's going to go 20 games over 500 in the East, at least. I think Toronto will take a step back, like Jacob said. And like I said before we even started talking about these projections, there's no favorite in the East, in my opinion. It's going to be who can grind the hardest in the playoffs. It's who's hot at that time, because I think it's a very level playing field in the East. I mean, I think the 8 seed could come out of it if the Hawks are playing out of their minds and they get the 8 seed. If their offense is on point at that time, they could come out of the East. I think we're going to see a really fun postseason from the Eastern Conference this season. And I'm also interested to see, it has, like we talked about the computerized standings, the Hawks 36-36. Will this be the first time in a long time where we see 8 teams over 500 in the Eastern Conference? So that's also something to look out for. If the Hawks go 37-35, take one away from the Bucks, they're 45-27. You did it. You have 8 teams over 500, so that's going to be another thing to look out for. Now moving on to the Western Conference. They have Lakers 1, Clippers 2, Jazz 3, Nuggets 4, Mavericks 5, Pelicans 6, Rockets 7, and the Suns 8, with the Trailblazers, Grizzlies, T-Wolves, and Kings all looking in 4 games back. So really, like always, a really close race for the 8th seed in the West. They have 3 teams not making the playoffs with 500 or better records. And the Kings 35-37 is what they have them at. 4 games out of that 8th spot. Ben, I'll start with you. Your thoughts on the Western Conference projections by ESPN.
All right, I think the Lakers, win the regular season title over there, finish first, get the 1 seed. I think that's a pretty easy choice. The Clippers should be right behind them at 2, maybe 3 if they slip a little bit, but I doubt that. So I think LA's probably going to go 1-2. You got the Jazz, the Nuggets. I think you could flip those 2. I think they're both pretty close in terms of how good they are. Both really solid teams. They'll probably finish in the top half of the conference in terms of playoff teams. Dallas Mavericks, though, slated to be 5th. I think they could push into that top 4 potentially. Luka's, he looked very good in the bubble. Him and Porzingis, that could be a duo that can do a lot of damage for years to come in the league. Then you got the Pelicans, the Suns in there. The Suns, with the addition of CP3, should be a playoff team, albeit it'll probably be the 8th seed, maybe the 7th if they're lucky. The Houston Rockets, to be honest, probably aren't a playoff team, and especially once they trade Harden. They're going right into the lottery and into a full rebuild. And even right now, to be honest, they're probably not a playoff team this year. They're probably going to finish 9th, and with the Harden trade, probably even lower than that. Then you got the Trailblazers that should be close. I think the Trailblazers can get in this year. If not them, then the Grizzlies. Minnesota, maybe a 10th place team. And then, honestly, the Golden State Warriors probably going to finish up around 11th. I think they'll be better than the 14th place that they're currently slated to finish in. And then OKC, that's a full rebuild. They're hands down, I should say. That's how the saying goes. The worst team in the West, they'll finish 15th.
Jacob?
The disrespect to the Portland Trailblazers is just what blows my mind here, because this is a team that made the Western Conference Finals just 2 seasons ago, and this past season they weren't healthy at all. You're going to have guys like Yusuf Nurkic, Zach Collins, Rodney Hood. They're going to be back in the fold. And then you added Carmelo Anthony. So I'd like to think that team 2 years ago plus Carmelo Anthony is going to make the postseason. And I think that ESPN is being too generous here with the Houston Rockets, with the New Orleans Pelicans, even to an extent the Phoenix Suns. I still think the Suns are ultimately going to make the postseason, probably at like the 7 or 8 seed. But New Orleans, I mean, they're a super young team still. I know they added Steven Adams and Eric Bledsoe for veteran presence, but I wouldn't necessarily put them in the top 8 just yet. And Houston as well, with all the internal issues and the fact that I personally think James Harden's out of there, I don't really see them making the postseason. And Golden State, I think that they're getting really disrespected too. I think Golden State could ultimately make the playoffs potentially because, as far as I'm concerned, as long as you have Steph Curry on your roster and you still have guys around you like Andrew Wiggins, Kelly Oubre, Draymond Green, I know he's kind of on the decline, but still he's Draymond. James Wiseman, I'm expecting him to have a good rookie season, and a guy like Eric Paschall, who's really underrated on that squad. I think that they can make a push for maybe a 6 to 8 seed. But yeah, Portland should be in the postseason. They even added Robert Covington. I totally forgot about that too. Robert Covington's on that team now too. They should be a top 5 seed in my mind. I think that they can compete in the Western Conference.
Okay, hot take there from Jacob. Love it. Riley?
I think it's amazing how much Jacob and I have been on the same page today. He kind of stole a lot of what I wanted to say about the Portland Trailblazers. I like the Lakers and the Clippers at 1 and 2. And then you look at teams like 3 through 5. I think they're separated by less than 3 or 4 games. Like from the 3rd seed to the 5 seed, that's a 3-game difference, if that. But the Portland Trailblazers, they got Derrick Jones Jr. too. He mentioned Robert Covington. They added Carmelo. Nurkic is going to be back. Zach Collins is going to be back. These are all players that they missed really bad down the stretch. I think the Trailblazers are a great team. They're going to fit somewhere in that 4 through 6 or 7 range. And then I really don't think that the Suns are going to make the playoffs. I think Devin Booker is best with the ball in his hands, and Chris Paul's going to have the ball in his hands a lot more than any other teammate Devin Booker has ever had, probably. So I think that might cause some problems there in Phoenix. It might make Devin Booker a better player in the long run, but the fit there, it doesn't really work in my mind. I'm struggling to see how Devin Booker is going to benefit from a teammate that wants to have the ball in their hands a lot. So that's where I stand. I think that the Portland Trailblazers need to sneak in there. In terms of everything else, I think it's pretty spot on. The Pelicans are probably going to be right there chasing that 8 seed. And I think that the Warriors just barely miss it. They're really going to miss Klay Thompson.
Brendan.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at the Eastern Conference saying that it's pretty much up for grabs. It's so crazy anyone can make that top 8. I forgot about how stacked the Western Conference actually is. These projections, though, is crazy to just see Golden State all the way down to 14. They're obviously not I think they obviously put a lot of emphasis on the Warriors losing Klay Thompson, but they're not going to be that bad. Yeah, I mean, I don't really want to repeat anything that you guys have said. I agree with pretty much everything. All these teams have superstars on them. I don't know about Utah and Denver finishing that high, but someone is going to be left out. I think the biggest question mark is Phoenix able to continue the momentum that they had in the bubble, going undefeated, and yet still missing the playoffs. Take that anger, take that motivation, and get themselves in the playoffs, maybe that 8, 7, or 6 seed. Someone's going to get left out, whether or not that's Portland or New Orleans. I think one of those two. But it's definitely a fun conference to watch. I still can't believe that Oklahoma City, they were just a powerhouse a couple years ago, and now they're projected to finish in the basement. Definitely a fun conference to watch. I agree with everything you guys said. Superstar conference more so than the East. So.
Yeah, that's the biggest pet peeve I have with the West is I love the teams. There's so many teams that I want to see succeed, but there's only 8 spots. Like, I love to see De'Aaron Fox and the Kings in the playoffs. I'd love to see John Morant in the playoffs. I want to see Russell and Karl-Anthony Towns in the playoffs. I want to see the Suns make it. I want to see the Pelicans make it. But there's only so many spots, and when the first 5 spots are basically set, the Rockets will probably provide a spot this year. The Warriors, I think they're getting a lot of disrespect at 14. Curry's going to miss a few games, but, I mean, when you have Curry back, you add Oubre, you have Wiggins, you add a big man in Wiseman. I still think that's a playoff roster if they mesh from the get-go. It's all going to be on how Steve Kerr coaches, ultimately. There's so many good teams in the West. The only team that does not have a chance to make the postseason in the West, in my opinion, is the Thunder. I think the Warriors could make it. I think the Spurs could have a run. I mean, anything can happen when Pop's your coach. Kings, Timberwolves, Grizzlies, Trailblazers, if they go on any of a big run in a 72-game season, they can make it. And the West is going to be fun. Like how we talked about the East, basically those 8 teams, they should make it. The West, I have no idea what's going to happen. There's 14 teams on this list that could finish over 500. And that's the crazy part about the West. So it's going to be interesting to see. I do agree with you guys. Lakers, Clippers, Jazz, Nuggets, and Mavericks, I think, are 5 shoo-ins for the playoffs. Pelicans, Suns going to be interesting. They're on the rise. Rockets, I think, fall out just because Harden's either going to be dealt or the chemistry he's going to try to make things bad. There's going to be no chemistry, I think, which is really a shame because I really like Steven Silas, and I don't want his first game or his first season to be. I think it's going to be bad, but I don't think it's going to be his fault, which sucks. But I mean, Trailblazers definitely getting disrespected, but there's also some other teams on this list that can make a surge if need be. So only time will tell, guys. This Western Conference should be really fun to watch, and it should still be led by who I believe is the best player in basketball still, and that's LeBron and the Lakers. with him and AD. They should still get that top seed. But that will do it for basketball. So now we'll jump back in to football. We'll talk about college first. So a lot is happening. This weekend's the final week of the regular season. Conference championship weekend is next weekend, and then it's bowl season. So we'll talk about a few game recaps. Number 12, Indiana takes down number 16, Wisconsin in a defensive battle. Really a good, boring game to watch. If you like offense, it was really boring. But if you like football, it was a good game. Indiana's offense did not look the same without Penix Jr. So, Brendan, I'll start with you. Is Indiana's offense done for without Penix, or was it just the fact that the Badgers' defense is that tough?
Yeah, I mean, he really was the main reason why they are having the success that they had. You take a look at their position guys. Ty Freifogel is really good, but I think it was Penix that made him good. They're now going to put in Jake Tuttle as their quarterback. Haven't seen him at all, so can't really evaluate him. But I don't think he's the same kind of athletic guy that Penix was. Still have Stevie Scott and Watt Fillier as their main running back and wide receivers. So can they forget that Penix isn't in there anymore and kind of rally around Tuttle is going to be the main question. Indiana has had such a great season. Looks like they had their game canceled this upcoming weekend. I think they just didn't have enough energy going to get them to where they really wanted to be this season. Ran into some walls like Ohio State and COVID for that matter. Penix was really the heart and soul of that offense, and I don't think they can keep it up without him in there.
Riley?
I think it was a little bit of both. So I think that Michael Penix was obviously a game changer for Indiana. He brought a lot to that offense. But if you look at Wisconsin's defense, the most points they let up all season outside of this game was 17 points to Northwestern. So it's not like that defense is bad at all. That's notoriously one of the stingiest defenses in the Big Ten. But it is true that Indiana just is not the same without Michael Penix Jr. He's a dynamic playmaker through and through.
Jacob?
Yeah, just like how I was stealing what Riley wanted to say, Riley just stole what I wanted to say. I mean, it's a tough task really for Tuttle, I think, because he was playing such a stingy defense at first. So I really do think it's a combination of both. Obviously, Michael Penix Jr. was really elite, so he's obviously going to bring more explosiveness than Tuttle would. But when you're going up against a defense that's that good in Wisconsin, I definitely feel as though it's just a combination of both. You really just can't evaluate the guy because he played against such an elite defense in his first start.
Alex?
I kind of agree with both. I mean, without a doubt, Penix was their star quarterback, and I think it is a huge loss for them, and I do think that he is the reason for a lot of their success this year. But at the same time, they took a victory over Wisconsin that they haven't seen in like 18 years, and they did it without Penix. So I think that says something. I mean, I do think Wisconsin's defense was very strong for Tuttle. I mean, it was his career debut, and I think, at least for Indiana, and I think it was a struggle for him, but he held his own. So I think it's a little bit of both because they were able to make this victory without their star quarterback. So I don't think that they're necessarily done for, but I don't know what the future holds.
Ben?
Yeah, I think with Penix Jr. out, I think Indiana's kind of done for the year. I think that was the main driver as far as their on-the-field success. Obviously, Tom Allen's got a great culture going on there, and he's a heck of a coach, clearly, and a ton of buy-in. The players love him; they love playing for him. They're playing hard for him. But I think you lose your best offensive player, who also happens to be at the most important position, in the game of football. I think that's going to be tough to replace, and I think that's going to kill them through the remainder of their year.
Yeah, it's going to be tough for them. Obviously, we'll get into the Big Ten championship. Right now, Indiana's in, but like I said, we'll get into how that's not going to happen. But I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see who they play in their bowl game because that will kind of dictate whether they'll win or not. You can't really predict it before they announce the bowl games. Obviously, their playoff hopes are squandered with the loss to Ohio State, but if they land a mediocre team, I think even with a backup quarterback, Tom Allen is a good enough coach to get them that win. But going forward, Allen's now on a lot of radars for bigger schools, I guess. You'd like to consider it a Big Ten school, a bigger school, but Indiana not really well known for their football. So this might just be an in-between team for Tom Allen to get his career out there. But we'll see. A lot depends on what happens today with the Big Ten. So Indiana just sitting, waiting patiently, hoping that things stay as is. But we'll move on to Coastal Carolina remains undefeated, handing BYU their first loss in a 22-17 game. As Brendan, I'll let you talk first about this. I'm sad, but Zach Wilson still has a good game, throws for 240 and a touchdown, but CJ Maribel rushes for 132 and 2 touchdowns for the Chanticleers. So, Brendan, is Coastal Carolina legit, or is Cincinnati the only Group of 5 contender?
Okay, first off, hats off to Zach Wilson and BYU for the game that they played. Zach Wilson was harassed all game long by Coastal Carolina, and the fact that they just put the game together in 2 days is outstanding. Flying out from Utah to go to Coastal and put a performance like that together, game of the year, without a doubt. The Cougars and Chanticleers. Hats off for Wilson. That last drive he put together was amazing. Just a couple of yards short from winning the ball game. So yeah, hats off. You get a lot of respect for BYU and Zach Wilson. But I still think Cincinnati is really the only Group of 5 contender that has a chance to make the playoff. Now, with their game canceled this weekend against Tulsa, that hurts their chances even more. But they will play Tulsa in the AAC championship, I think. But even then, it's still a stretch to get into the Final Four. I just don't see it happening. There's not enough scenarios that benefit them from getting in. Now, I would love to see, if Cincinnati wasn't dealing with COVID issues, play Ohio State this weekend. That's a no-brainer. Or I would have even loved to see Coastal Carolina play Cincinnati. But yeah, the Bearcats, again, this is the Group of 5 situation that all these teams have to deal with. Play undefeated or go undefeated, but just come up short because of the stupid rules that college football has and only allowing 4 teams in the playoff.
Ben.
All right, we're unmuted this time. Good. All right, let's see. I think Coastal Carolina's legit. That's a legit good team. But it's just so hard with only having 4 playoff spots to get into the playoff if you're not a Power 5 school, a Power 5 program. So I don't think they're going to be able to get in there. Cincinnati, just because they're ranked so high, is probably the only one that has a shot of maybe slipping into 4th. But even then, you think about it. Notre Dame, Clemson from the ACC should both get in. Whoever wins the SEC is probably getting in. So you probably need Alabama to win the SEC and then Ohio State to get upset in the Big Ten championship game. And even then, Texas A&M or Florida would probably slide in before Cincinnati. Which brings up a good question, which is, should the FBS move to more of a true playoff? And I think they should, have automatic qualifiers for one year conference and then like 4 at-large bids. So you have 2 7-team brackets on each side. The top 2 teams each get a first-round bye, and then you're just rolling from there. I think that's where they should go. I don't think they ever will go there. But until that happens, I don't think a group of 5 team has a shot at getting into the playoff.
Riley.
Yeah, I think he improves more of how legitimate of a football team Coastal Carolina is than it proved how bad BYU was. I mean, BYU is a legitimate talent. They're a talented roster. They have a future NFL player at quarterback. They have an offensive line that's consistently proven they're one of the best in the nation. And Coastal Carolina beat them up. They were physical and they were more dominant right off the snap of the football. And I think Coastal Carolina proved that they're a really good team. But like everyone else said, I don't think any of these group of 5 teams are going to have a shot at making the playoff because it's only a 4-team playoff. There's 5 power conferences, and those conferences control, the most value. They have the biggest stake in college football. So those are going to be the guys that are going to make the Final Four. Unfortunately, that leaves the Power 5 out, and it's just sad for football. Like Ben said, we should go to that playoff format. The 7 teams on each side of the bracket, top 2 teams get a bye, and you play in from there. But unfortunately, it won't be that way. And even though Coastal Carolina is a really good team, I don't think any team, Cincinnati, Coastal, BYU, ever really had a shot at the playoff.
Alex.
I agree with what everyone said. I mean, just because it's the way that the NCAA is set up with the 4-team playoff, I don't think that makes Coastal Carolina any less of a legitimate team. I think they are legitimately good. It's the way that everything is set up. And I don't think that they had a chance just because of that. But it doesn't mean that they're not a legitimately good team.
Jacob.
I'm just fed up with college football. I'm not going to lie to you. Because like everyone said, Coastal Carolina is a legit team. They're really good. But they never were legit in the sense that they were never going to have a fair shot at making the playoff. Because, I mean, look at BYU. BYU is undefeated, and they were 13th heading into this week, which is just ridiculous. It just shows how the committee really doesn't take into account any group of 5 team, or really, in BYU's case, they weren't even in a group of 5. They were an independent school. So I love my group of 5 schools. I really do. I've been rooting for them all year. But this win doesn't really mean anything to Coastal Carolina. They have no shot at making the playoff, which I would argue, because now they have wins over a ranked Louisiana Lafayette team and BYU, that they should get at least more consideration, but they're not, just because of the conference they're in, which I think is completely wrong. And I agree they should expand the playoff, but unfortunately they'll probably never ever do that.
Yeah, I think both teams are legit, and I think they should expand the playoffs as well. If anything, this year should have been the year they did it. MLB did it, and that was probably the most fun playoffs in MLB I've watched. Just having the extra teams, the extra 3-game series rather than just a 1-game wild card was more fun to watch. And now the MLB might adapt to that playoff form. Like, who knows, if college football would have done that, they might have finally realized that that's what's been needed, and we adapt to it. But it's not looking good, and for the group of 5 schools, until it happens, it's never going to happen for them, unfortunately.
I think the group of 5 in college football overall has to ask themselves, like, if the playoff committee is not even considering the group of 5, like, why is the group of 5 playing the games at all?
Yeah.
Like, all these teams going undefeated, literally for nothing. Like, I agree with Ben said, we talked about it over the weekend and over text, like, making it like a legit playoff. Like, because right now it's a beauty contest, honestly. Like, take a look at which teams make the most money, basically, and they get into the playoff. Like, there really is no set in stone qualifications to get in, and it's the most frustrating playoff. It's the only playoff in all sports that's like this.
Yeah, where it's not statistics or not, it's just opinions. And
right,
for the undefeated teams that aren't playing, it kind of sucks. But this is what we're going to get into now. So last week, number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6, they all win. So nothing changes. But big news broke yesterday. Michigan, too many COVID cases. And so the big game called off. No Ohio State-Michigan game, which makes Ohio State ineligible for the Big Ten Championship because they only have 5 wins, or 5 games. So that makes the Big Ten Championship Indiana Northwestern. But now the Big Ten is trying to change the rules to keep Ohio State in, which I think is ridiculous, and it's a bad look for the Big Ten. They're just trying to make Ohio State happy, but nobody else is happy about it. Because, there's teams that put their team on the line for 11 weeks, and Ohio State's going to get in with 5. And that's why teams are unhappy. But, so now we're going to talk about this. What differentiates Ohio State from a group of 5 school right now? I want you guys' honest opinion. This was not in the script. What differentiates Ohio State from a group of 5 school right now, resume-wise? Jacob, I'll start with you.
Well, resume-wise, I think that they look really bad compared to a bunch of other teams. I'd take Coastal Carolina over them resume-wise, and I'd take Cincinnati over them resume-wise. And before BYU even lost this week, I would have probably put BYU over them resume-wise too. It's simply just the Ohio State brand. They just want Ohio State in there because they are Ohio State. Ohio State's schedule before the season looked pretty good, I'm not going to lie, because Penn State, we all thought Penn State would probably be pretty good. Michigan, we thought Michigan would probably be way better than they were. Michigan State, even, we probably thought they'd be better. But obviously, these teams aren't very good. They don't have a good win on their schedule. They don't deserve to be in the playoff. Their defense is not very good. Their offense, even though everybody talks about how good Justin Fields is, I'm still not fully sold on Justin Fields because I don't know how he played against a really good team, because when he played against one really good defense, he didn't do so hot. So, I just don't see how Ohio State resume-wise has any reason to be in the playoff. It's just the Ohio State brand. That's the only reason why they're staying as the 4 seed right now.
Alex.
Yeah, like Brendan said earlier, I think it's major, a huge factor of it. It's a popularity contest. They are the Ohio State, and that's why, it's their name. Without a doubt, they are good. They're one of the best teams, but like they said, I think Coastal Carolina had a better shot. They all had a better shot. They have better records, and I don't think that it's fair that NCAA is trying to change the rules just to make them happy because they let their guard down. It's not fair that just because they're Ohio State, they try to get the easy way out. I just don't think it's fair.
Riley.
I think obviously Ohio State's the team in a position where they don't have enough games, and they're trying to get a playoff spot, trying to get a spot in the conference championship to prove themselves. But at the end of the day, the Big Ten, I feel like they would do this for any team that was undefeated at this point, because that conference needs to try and get a team into the playoff. I don't care. They're competing against SEC. They're competing against Clemson. They're competing against Notre Dame. They would do anything to get a team into that conference championship. Now, do I think it helps that it's Ohio State in this position? Yes. I ultimately think that Ohio State is going to be in the conference championship, or they're going to find a way that Ohio State can play another game. But I do think your original question was loaded also. You said what separates Ohio State from a Power 5 team based on their resume. Well, yeah, based on their resume, not much would separate them from a Power 5 team, but I do think Ohio State is loaded with so much talent. If they went up against a Power 5 team that they're being compared against, they'd smack them.
Group of 5?
If they went up against one of these Group of 5 teams, there's just too much talent. They get smacked. Cincinnati's a great football team, but against Ohio State, they get smacked. That's just the truth. So
I disagree with that a little
based
bit.
Based on their resume, nothing sets them apart, but based on talent, Ohio State is definitely one of the top 5 or 6 teams in the country, without a doubt.
I disagree with that a little bit in the sense that I don't see much of a difference in Cincinnati and Indiana. And that was Ohio State's best win, and they struggled. Jacob said,
I definitely do see a difference between Cincinnati and Indiana because Cincinnati may have some really great players that are starting on both sides of the football that are playing really clean, excellent technical football. But when you're looking at the guy that's rotating in on D-line, when you're looking at the skill players that are rotating in because guys are getting tired, Indiana has twice as much depth as a team like Cincinnati. Cincinnati just doesn't have it across the board like a team like Indiana or Ohio State would.
I don't know. Ohio State hasn't passed the eye test, in my opinion, either. Their team has not looked that good this year. They haven't played a full game of football. The second half against Rutgers was laughable. The second half against Penn State was laughable. They looked flat the whole game against Indiana. Fields threw 3 picks. If he throws 3 picks against any team,
Michigan State.
I mean, that's one game. Michigan State's horrible. But Ohio State, their defense has obvious holes. Their quarterback struggled against the only good defense they've played, and their resume's hot garbage. So, in my opinion,
All right, well, that's just kind of the situation that they were put in this year.
but
With COVID, they couldn't play a non-conference team. Maryland had the COVID issue. Ohio State didn't. Michigan, I'm not even going to mention the Michigan game because that would have been a 70-0 blowout.
I went 70-0, 70-7, but continue.
Whatever. Okay, Indiana was a really good team, and Indiana gave them a game. They blew out Nebraska. They blew out Rutgers. I don't know what else you want them to do.
They haven't played a complete game. Against Nebraska, they struggled in the first half. Ohio State has not played a complete game, and in order to compete in the playoffs, you have to play a complete game. Notre Dame would not have beat Clemson if they didn't play a complete game.
No one plays a perfect game.
Huh?
A perfect game does not exist.
I don't know.
The perfect game does not exist in college football this year.
I'm not saying perfect, but a complete game.
Yeah, well, you can't play a complete game in college football this year. I just don't think it's possible.
I would say Notre Dame played a complete game against Clemson. I would say Alabama played a complete game against Georgia. Those are pretty big games.
What is the only reason the Big Ten played this year? Was to get Ohio State in the playoff and not be left out. A year in the playoff without the Big Ten would not have been good for the conference. Ohio State is the only reason why the Big Ten played this year. They have better recruiting than any other Big Ten school. They have the better coach than any other Big Ten school. They have the better players. And that is the reason why they're playing in the Big Ten championship.
If Ohio State doesn't like it, then leave. They don't have to stay in the Big Ten.
They might, yeah, because the Big Ten needs Ohio State more than Ohio State needs the Big Ten.
Exactly. Ohio State shot themselves in the foot. They were given the option to leave earlier in the season.
Ohio State shot themselves in the foot.
They were given the option to leave the Big Ten if the Big Ten wasn't going to play.
All right, well, then who would they have been played?
They could have joined the Big 12 or ACC.
That was not going to happen.
They could have.
I'm just saying that it was not going to happen.
Why wasn't it? Because the Big Ten heard about that. The Big Ten decided to throw everything together late.
There's millions and millions of reasons why that didn't happen, and it's called money. It's called dollars and cents.
Right. Exactly.
So Ohio State cares more about money, but they knew the Big Ten would do anything to make them happy.
You're not going to go into a $10 million hole or a $15 million hole for travel and scheduling and all this stuff as Ohio State in a season that's already in the muck anyways. You're going to wait for your conference. You're not going to buy it yourself. That makes no sense as an institution to do for Ohio State. You have to wait for the conference in that situation.
I don't think they should be in the playoffs right now. I think it's a lot harder to go 11-1 than it is to go 6-0 against the 72nd ranked strength schedule.
Well, too bad the playoff committee isn't asking.
And if Ohio State gets the 4 seed and Bama gets 1, we'll all see in round 1 why Ohio State doesn't belong. So that's just my opinion. Alabama would shellac that
might
team.
be true. That might be true, and they might get blown out by Alabama. But it's a beauty contest, so.
Which is ridiculous. They need to refine the BCS formula and figure out a way that stats get it, and not Joel Klatt and Kirk Herbstreit picking the Buckeyes every year. Don't get me wrong. The Buckeyes do deserve to be in the playoffs most years, but this year I don't think they should be in because their resume is not there. Last year I put the Buckeyes in.
I don't know. Well,
2 years ago I put the Buckeyes in. 3 years ago, what was that? The year they got crapped on by Clemson? I would have put Penn State in. But I don't know. It just frustrates me that it's a popularity contest and Ohio State gets in every year because they're Ohio State.
I mean, let's stop talking like, oh, well, Cincinnati played more games. Shut up. Like, let's quit with that. The recruiting is better at Ohio State in the Big Ten. The coaching is better. Like, who cares? Who gives a damn if you played 8 games, 10 games, if you don't have the personnel, you don't have the coaching, and you don't have the recruiting? I mean, that matters. Ohio State's just a better program. And, yeah, they struggle, but they blew out Michigan State. They managed to
2-4.
Managed to finish off the best team they played, Indiana. Like, I'm sorry, you don't want to play close games, but they managed to execute when it mattered.
So your best wins at basketball school. Continue.
They blew out Nebraska. They started a little slow, but no one plays a complete game. It's pretty rare to play a complete game.
Hasn't been relevant since 1999. Continue.
Or allow a garbage time touchdown.
Ben, let me stop you real quick. Michigan State, what's their record? Indiana's a basketball school having a good year, an okay year. And Nebraska hasn't been relevant since 1999, the year I was born. So, yes, those are wins. That's true. But you're proving my point. They're not good wins. They're just wins. Cincinnati has wins. And that's what I'm saying. They both have wins. But the resume is not there. Your strength schedule is in the bottom 50% of college football.
All right, they can't help that. The Big Ten didn't let them play out of conference games. They can't help that. I mean, at the end of the day, do you want them to blow teams out by 70-0? Because that's kind of what it sounds like. And I'm getting a little defensive. I'm an OSU. I'm not going to lie. But it's like, at the end of the day, they're blowing out teams they should blow out. Like, this is a very good ball club. They might not be number 1 or 2 or 3, but they're the 4th best team in the country. Maybe 5th at worst.
And the personnel is not. I would disagree. The personnel is not all the way there. The defense has not looked that good to me. There was a huge step.
The defensive line is not very good.
There's a huge step backwards from last season's defense for the Buckeyes. Huge step backwards. Now, I'll give you, when your offense is playing good, you have one of the best offenses in Ohio State's one of the best offenses in college football between Justin Fields, Garrett Wilson, and Chris Olave. But when they played a good defense, he threw 3 picks. And my point is, Ohio State 3 picks against a Notre Dame, a Clemson, an Alabama, a Florida, a Texas A&M is probably a 2-possession loss. They're all just better than Indiana.
Yeah, regardless, they're still
we'll see when they play Northwestern. I think that'll be
Northwestern's not that good.
Test.
Northwestern's not that good. That's my point. The Big Ten Championship isn't a good game. I'd rather see Indiana Northwestern because it'll probably be a better game than Northwestern Ohio State.
I also wanted to point out, you guys said that Ohio State's defense isn't where it was last year. Their defensive line is still a top 5 ranked defensive line in football. They were recently ranked the second best defensive line by Pro Football Focus in college football. So I think maybe in the secondary we might be missing something. Like Jeff Okudah's obviously not there, but we still have Sean Wade. There's still some talent in the secondary, but I mean our defensive line's good. We have a great corner.
I agree, Riley, because we're playing and then we're not playing. Then we're playing and then we're not playing. This team has not had a chance to put it all together because there's so many interruptions. You know, we can't practice this day, then we can't practice this day. You know, COVID's throwing a huge wrench into everything. Like they can't get any momentum going. Now I know I'm defending Ohio State and I'm not an Ohio State fan, but you have to be realistic in the kind of season that they've had.
They're just on a different track, it seems, than everybody else. I mean, because of COVID, and it's kind of out of everybody's control. But they have the name, they have the skill to some degrees, and I think their schedule is a result of something that can't be controlled.
And it can't be, but they think Michigan's the whole reason their season's on the cusp of being over when they were the reason for 2 previous postponement or cancellations in the season. You play either Illinois or Maryland, we're not dealing with any of this. And Ohio State thinks they're God's child sent from heaven in the Big Ten, but they were the reason for 2 of the 3 cancellations on their schedule. Their coach got COVID, so I mean that's their fault.
I don't disagree. They let their guard down in that sense.
Yeah, and that's the big thing. Like, if I'm Jim Harbaugh, I know I'm not beating Ohio State. Go tell your kids to lick some doorknobs and get this game over with because it's going to keep Ohio State out of the playoffs.
Okay, all right. Well, let's move on, Will.
He did it. Jim Harbaugh took down the Buckeyes for the first time in his career, and it will be his last hurrah as a Wolverine coach. Anyways, the third set of the rankings come out. Nothing changes as far as the top 6 goes, which is what everybody's really looking at. As far as the rest of the top 10, 10 stays the same. 9 moves to 7, while 7 and 8 drop down 1 each. Which I know, Jacob, hurts you a little bit. Cincinnati drops down 1. But you got to give it to Matt Campbell and Iowa State. They are playing some very good football as of late. So, got to give it out to the Mount Union alum. Go Raiders, you know. So.
Yeah, but he's got 2 losses. I don't care. He's got 2 losses compared to the 0. I mean, it just bothers me.
I know it does. It sucks, but let's be realistic. Like we just said, nobody ranked 7 through 10 right now has a chance, it seems like, to make the.
I know. It just bothers me. I was just so hopeful beginning of the year, you know, and just to see it all crumble right before me, it just hurts my heart.
So, yeah. So let's talk. We're getting heated here in NCAA, but that's what's going to happen when they don't add playoff spots and it's a weird year. So let's talk fun playoff scenarios. Here's one that I think could play out, and Ben's going to hate me for this because he's obviously really passionate about the Buckeyes right now based on that last thing. He told me to shut up. I don't shut up. I grow up, and when I look at it, I'm just kidding. That's from Stand By Me. Good movie if you've never seen it. But so if Florida beats Alabama by a possession or less, like less than 7, 3 points, whatever, and Clemson beats Notre Dame by the same, you put those 4 one-loss teams in over the Buckeyes. Ben, I want you to answer this first. It's a weird playoff scenario. It's a weird scenario that could happen now.
Like, run it back. Like, run through that scenario again.
Florida beats Alabama in the SEC championship by possession. Notre Dame loses to Clemson in the ACC championship by possession. But Notre Dame already has that win over Clemson. And then Bama's obviously Bama. They've had a very good season. They'd all 4 have 1 losses. Clemson and Florida be champions. Notre Dame and Alabama would still have very good resumes and 1 loss.
Yeah, I mean, in that scenario, Clemson gets in, Notre Dame gets in, Alabama gets in. Florida might get in that case if they keep it close with Alabama.
If they beat Alabama?
Yeah. If they beat Alabama. Oh, yeah, they beat Alabama.
They're all 4 in. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. That's Ohio State. So this is a playoff scenario. I was talking with a couple other people. That's probably Ohio State's worst case scenario. Would you guys all agree?
Yeah, that's fair.
Or is there anyone that thinks that Ohio State would get in over one of those 1-loss teams?
Yeah, that's the only way that Ohio State doesn't get into the playoff, I think.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that. Like, if they don't get in because of that, it's like, all right, I can respect that. Like, I think that's pretty reasonable. But otherwise, Florida loses, OSU's the 4 seed.
Yeah. Now, what scenario has to happen for Texas A&M to get in? Florida lost and Ohio State lost to Northwestern?
Probably, yeah.
Okay. Now, Cincinnati, is there any chance that, Jacob, your Bearcats are getting into the playoffs? Is there any scenario we can think of? I mean, what if Alabama loses to Arkansas this weekend? We got a chance.
Yeah.
But
craziness could happen. I could see if Alabama would lose, but I think more reasonably, Florida loses, they're out. I think if Texas A&M doesn't have another game, so that's just where it gets all. I don't think that.
I think it would have to be something like this has to happen for you. Okay, Cincinnati beats Tulsa in the American Championship.
Yes.
LSU somehow upsets Florida this weekend. Bama beats Florida in the SEC.
Clemson would have to lose.
Or Bama beats Florida in the SEC Championship. We'll just do that. So Alabama has a spot.
Yeah.
Notre Dame beats Clemson by 2 possessions. We'll just make it a little extra so Clemson's pushed back even further. So that gives Notre Dame and Alabama 2 spots. Ohio State loses to Northwestern. I'm trying to think here. Who am I missing? So Texas A&M would move into that 3rd spot. And then Iowa State
Iowa
loses
State
the Big 12
loses.
championship.
Iowa State would have to lose, yeah.
And then
But
Georgia
here's
would
the
have to lose
interesting
too, but Georgia could lose this weekend to Missouri. Missouri's no pushover.
That is true.
Because they might try to put a
Do
Georgia
we
team
think,
over
though-
a Cincinnati team. But that would probably be the only scenario. So, Jacob, I'll send you that email, write that out for you. You got your teams you're rooting for these next 2 weekends. But anybody have any other fun playoff scenarios that you think could play out that could get somebody in that's not in right now? Or do you kind of think
I'm going to have to say with the Cincinnati one, though, just knowing how the college football playoff committee is, I would not put it past them to keep Ohio State in the top 4 just because they don't want to see Cincinnati in there, even though they'd lose to Northwestern. Because they'd say Northwestern's got 1 loss. Let's just keep Ohio State in there. So, I don't know. That's just how crazy this all is to me.
does the Pac-12 USC have a chance?
This is no time for jokes, Will.
They're 4-0. They've been playing very good football, Brendan.
I think a way that the Cyclones can get in is that if Clemson loses, Ohio State loses, and then Florida loses to Alabama in the championship, I think then Iowa State might be able to get in.
Because then they play Oklahoma right for the Big 12.
Yeah, they
So that'd
beat
be another big
Oklahoma.
win too.
So that might be a case where Iowa State might be able to get that 4th spot.
Crazy 2020 could have a 2-loss team in the playoffs, but I mean, we'll see. These next 2 weekends are going to dictate a lot. So we'll look here at week 15 now. Obviously, Michigan, Ohio State canceled. Ole Miss, Texas A&M canceled, and then Cincinnati, Tulsa technically postponed. But I don't know when they're going to make that up because next week they play I guess next week can be considered the makeup, but it is the conference championship. Any upset specials or game of the weeks for you guys? Ben, I'll start with you.
All right, unmuted. All right, let me pull this up real quick. Take a look. It'll ever load.
I can come back to you. I'll go to Brendan first, all right?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Brendan, any upset specials?
I think you mentioned it. Georgia against Missouri is the most interesting game on the docket. Missouri's been playing actually really good football lately. They haven't played great teams, but pulling out wins, running out the scores. And Georgia obviously has had a shaky year. Still number 9, but 6-2, so that might be an interesting one. Other than that, looking at the schedule, USC and UCLA play their rivalry game. But UCLA 3-2 against a 4-0 Trojans team isn't that exciting. But yeah, I think all the interesting ones were canceled.
Feels like 2005 again. USC undefeated. The Bush
right?
push.
Yeah, I might throw in a crazy upset, Illinois against Northwestern, which would kind of throw a wrench into who plays in the Big Ten championship.
No, Northwestern
I
has
know that's a
clinched.
stretch.
Northwestern has clinched.
Oh, they clinched. Okay, yeah.
But that would definitely make it a little harder on Ohio State's resume. Once again, going back to that, if Northwestern's 5-2, a loss to Illinois might knock them out of the top 25. That's a pretty bad loss.
Yeah, they could be because Fighting Illini, they're a cheeky team.
Basketball school now, all of a sudden.
Yep.
Riley, upset specials game of the week.
My upset special and game of the week is going to, first off, my game of the week, I guess. I almost went with the same game for both, but I've decided against it. Game of the week, I have North Carolina versus Miami. I think North Carolina gets it done, and they beat the favorite. They beat the De'Aaron King in Miami. I don't see Sam Howell not getting the job done. He makes things too interesting. And then for upset, I'm looking at Troy versus Coastal Carolina. Troy upset LSU a few years ago. They're a team that normally tends to get it done when people don't expect them. Coastal Carolina is a Cinderella team, but if I'm going for something very bold and brash, that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to take Troy versus Coastal as my upset.
Did you just use the title of Squidward's painting as your choice of words?
I did. I'm glad that you noticed.
I have that painting as wall decor.
Yeah, bold and brash.
Yeah. Oh man, I love it. Jacob, game of the week upset special.
So I'm glad Riley pointed out Troy over Coastal because that's really my big upset that I can see happening. Because I remember
you guys are on the same page
Ohio
today.
State, we really are. Ohio State beat Penn State a couple of years ago, and then they laid a big fat egg against Iowa the very next week. So really, it's when you're coming off a week full of big highs like Coastal is, then I can see Troy maybe sneaking in and getting the win there. Also, I think Wisconsin could potentially bounce back against Iowa and get a win there. And my game of the week this week is actually LSU at Florida. I know LSU is not very good, but it could be a trap game for the Gators. You never know. They really need to win this game to stay in the playoff race because really what it's going to come down to is if they beat Alabama, they're in the playoff. And it's also going to be big for Kyle Trask to see if he can stay on pace for winning the Heisman potentially. So I think there's a lot of implications for the Gators in this game, which is why it's my game of the week.
Riley and Jacob today were like when I sent out the outline. One of them didn't study and asked for the copy of the homework, and now they're making the same points. But no, I'm just kidding. You guys are on the same page today, and I love it. But Alex, upset specials game of the week.
All right, I'm going to jump a little bit on the bandwagon here because my game of the week, I mean, other than a lot of the big games being canceled or postponed, I was also looking at North Carolina and Miami for my game of the week. And as for upset specials, I mean, I could sort of see where the guys are coming from with Coastal Carolina and Troy, so that one would probably also be my upset special. But yeah, as for game of the week, I'd have to go with North Carolina and Miami.
All right, Ben, you got it loaded?
Yep.
What's the upset special game of the week for you?
All right, let's go. Yeah, I think Florida, LSU, that's a big game for Florida because they got to finish that strong. They want to continue to be in playoff contention. I agree that Troy could potentially upset Coastal Carolina. A lot of times you see teams come off big wins. We see it a lot in March Madness and in the NCAA basketball tournament. Teams that usually pull off those big upsets like Buffalo over Arizona a couple years ago usually drop the very next game because they're riding such a high. They're not ready to go into that next game and not prepared mentally because they're still riding that high and they crash and burn. So I think we could see that potentially happen. That'd be a game to watch, my game of the week. And my upset special. Other than that, I mean, there's not a ton. UNC Miami could be a good game. Georgia, Missouri. Outside of that, I mean, not a ton here.
Yeah, my upset special has been complete. Michigan, Ohio State. Michigan upset the team. No, I'm kidding. My for real upset special, though, is Missouri, Georgia. I don't think Georgia's been as dominant of a team as we've seen over the past few years. They made a huge mistake in picking Jake Fromm over Justin Fields, and they're still seeing it play out to this day as they still struggle at the quarterback position. So I think Missouri comes in and just ruins all hope for the Bulldogs. Now, game of the week, I have North Carolina, Miami, and that is because of the ACC implications it has as far as resume building goes. So right now, Notre Dame's biggest win, Clemson. Second biggest win, North Carolina. Clemson's biggest win is Miami. So this game really plays into a lot to the top two ACC teams' resumes. If North Carolina pulls it off, Notre Dame's resume gets a little better. If Miami wins, Clemson's resume gets a little better. And that's something you got to look at if you're the committee. This game, not big impacts as far as the ACC championship because it's set. The championship's set. But this has big resume implications as far as two teams competing for playoff spots right now goes. And that's why I have North Carolina, Miami as my game of the week. So it's going to be a fun weekend. Again, a lot over the next 2 weekends. We'll decide a lot. We're still waiting for big news because the Big Ten has not officially announced that they're changing the rules. So right now it's still Indiana Northwestern. They're meeting one more time, and if the coaches aren't happy with the decision, Ohio State won't get to play in the Big Ten championship. But they're having a meeting with every official possible. There'll probably be 150 dudes on a Zoom call here in the next hour deciding if Ohio State's going to be in or not for the Big Ten championship. But that will take us to the NFL now. So, big week for Northeast Ohioans. For the Browns fans in Northeast Ohio, you're riding your high. For the Steelers fans in Northeast Ohio, you ain't perfect no more. So we'll get into that, but we'll start with some breaking news. The New York Jets fire their defensive coordinator Greg Williams after an all-out blitz call leads to their 12th loss, their 0-12 record so far. Brendan, I'll start with you. Do you agree with this decision?
Heck yeah, I agree with the decision. It was about time. I don't like Greg Williams at all. I didn't even like him when he was with the Browns. This is just the start of the turnaround that needs to happen. And it's the start of a lot of change going on in New York. I don't know what he was doing with that all-out blitz call. No one does an all-out blitz when you're up 4 and you just got to keep the other team out of the end zone when they're behind their 50-yard line. Like, I could have called, just send everyone back at the goal line and stop them from making the catch. Williams is gone now. Gase needs to go. Joe Douglas needs to go. I wouldn't say Sam Darnold. I still have hope for that guy. He was just put in a bad situation. But, yeah, just thank God Williams is gone.
Ben, you agree with the firing?
Yeah, of course I agree with the firing. This man, in a Hail Mary situation, decided to go cover 0 and send the house. With a guy like Henry Ruggs.
Yeah, I was going to say with Henry Ruggs as the deep option.
There's a guy with Henry Ruggs with the speed that he's got. I believe it's 4.4 or somewhere within a tenth either way of that. That's just an incredibly stupid decision. It's not It's not the first time he's done that. He did that when he was with Cleveland against the Broncos back in 2018, the game they won on a walk-off sack by Jerome Peppers. They ran the exact same play. So, this is something he's run time and time again. It's just his ego seems to be the big issue. We're gonna get done this way. We're gonna go do it instead of just dropping back into a prevent defense and playing it safe. And if they do that, they probably win. And apparently, reportedly, I was just reading a report. Adam Gase was actually genuinely surprised by that play call. So that kind of tells you everything you need to know about New York. And kind of surprising, honestly, that the linebacker there or any of their other defensive players didn't say, "Yo, check out of that, go this." You know what I'm saying?
A little bit of play call in Madden that stops that play just to the 3-man deep or whatever. But
yeah, engage 8.
That's what he called. I'm saying there's play calls in Madden that would have prevented the touchdown. But Alex, do you agree with Greg Williams being canned?
Yeah, 100% agree.
She's laughing about it.
It's about time. I'm surprised they didn't do it sooner. Why wait until your 12th loss to take action with that? I feel like you could take the hint after so many. I don't understand why they waited so long. I thought if they would have done it sooner, they would maybe have a chance to somewhat save themselves. They only have 4 games left now. You can't really do much with that. But yeah, heck yeah, I'm happy that he's gone.
And Jacob, are you guys consensus on this?
Somewhat. I see all these points and they're great. His ego is just incredibly stupid and annoying at times, and he definitely made a horrible call. But let's be real. They fired the wrong guy still. Just fire the guy that hired him, for crying out loud. He caused these guys like Jamal Adams, Le'Veon Bell, Robbie Anderson, they all didn't want to be there, in part because Adam Gase is the head coach. Just fire Adam Gase, for crying out loud. He's ruined Sam Darnold. He's the guy that brought Greg Williams in, and the offense is terrible because of Adam Gase. The whole coaching staff is awful, and you just need to fire the whole coaching staff at this point and just do a complete reboot on the culture in New York.
You got to pull one out of the Hard Knocks. Greg Williams, then block him. Block him. But no, I agree in a sense. I like Jacob's take. Fire them all. I think they're holding on to Adam Gase in hopes that he goes 0-16 and gets them the top pick. In my opinion, I'm not sold that Greg Williams didn't do this on purpose, because Jacksonville blew the Minnesota game 2 minutes before the Jets blew this game. So maybe they said, oh, hey, like, I don't know. They said maybe they thought, hey, Jacksonville's winning, so if we can win, we'll still have the bottom, we'll have the top draft pick. Oh, Jacksonville blew it. We need to blow it. And now we still have the top draft pick. So maybe Greg Williams pulled off a favor for the Jets organization.
All-around scoreboard.
Yeah, I had it on the side of my TV while I was watching the games. But no, I'm just thinking like maybe it was planned by Greg Williams that way, and he didn't deserve to be fired because he's got them the top pick right now. But
no coach wants 0-16 attached to him.
That whole coaching staff is
no coordinator wants that attached to him. Come on now.
But
stop playing.
It's a good riddance. The Jets need to just clean house at the end of the year, and I don't know. Harbaugh maybe. There we go. Bring him to the Big Apple. Hot take. We'll see. It's going to be a coaching carousel. So moving on to the second worst team in football, the Jaguars. They lost in overtime. Should have lost in regulation. The Vikings really blew every opportunity in regulation. They're lucky that the Vikings even got to overtime. And the Jags still couldn't win it. But Gardner Minshew, reportedly frustrated in Jacksonville, has reportedly begged to play. Jacob, I'll start with you. Should Minshew be starting, or are you riding the Glennon 0-2 train in good games, though? 2 good games by Glennon, but 0-2. Do you think they should go back to the stash or roll with Glennon?
I'm just confused as to why the stash really cares whether or not he starts, because in my eyes, all season long, all Gardner Minshew was going to be was a bridge quarterback. They only put him in so that they could be bad, in my opinion, honestly. So he's not going to start next year. So really, what's it matter? Like, you're in a horrible situation to begin with. Just rest your body or something like that. You're not going to win, and you're ultimately not going to get the starting job the next season, because they're going to end up getting a guy. If they get the number 1 pick, it's going to be Trevor Lawrence. If not, it's probably going to be like Justin Fields or Trey Lance, somebody like that. So if I'm Gardner, I don't really care, because I don't want to make myself look bad with a horrible team around me too at the same time.
Yeah, I was just Ben and I curling the mustaches while we talk about Minshew. But hey, Jacob, he has the most wins of all the quarterbacks in the room this season.
Hey, one's better than none.
That's what I'm saying. They've literally lost every game since, though. But Alex, you seem to agree with Jacob. It looked like should Minshew be starting, or are you in agreement that it's Glennon time in Jacksonville?
No, I 100% agree with Jacob. I mean, it's a matter of bad and worse. If he were to go out there, it'd be like setting him up for failure. Like, he's not going to win. Like, I don't see anything good coming out of that. So, why bother?
Okay. Ben?
I gotta say the sides of my mustache here are looking pretty good, pretty nice and curly. But I think I just start Glennon the rest of the way. Your season's over, and to be honest, Glennon hasn't played bad since they started him. So just start him the rest of the way. And either way, neither of them is starting next year. Maybe a game or two before they hand the reins over to whoever they draft in the first round next year. So I don't think just keep Minshew on the bench. Either way. It's like bad or worse.
Brendan.
It doesn't matter.
Oh, sorry. Brendan.
No, well, I mean, Minshew is the only reason why they're not 0-16 right now. So,
very true.
No, I mean, Glennon hasn't been playing awful. Almost, I mean, the past 4 or 5 games have actually been close, making it close with Minnesota and Cleveland and Houston. They just can't pull it out. Throwing Minshew in there is not going to make a difference, I don't think. If you want to keep that second pick, I would keep Glennon in the rest of the way.
Yeah, I think Minshew gives him more of an opportunity to win, especially in these close games these last couple of weeks. Minshew might have beaten the Browns a couple weeks ago. But it honestly doesn't matter at this point. It's kind of to a point where they're going quarterback no matter what. So no matter who's starting, they're not going to be starting next year. So we'll see. You don't want to win, though. If anything, you're hoping the Jets win and you can get your pick at quarterback, whether you want Fields or Lawrence or Lance, whoever happens to be, in your opinion, the number 1 pick, number 2 pick. But continuing with the topic of quarterbacks, Jalen Hurts will make his first career start this weekend for the Eagles. they're finally benching Wentz and going with Hurts after putting him in against the Packers. He did score a touchdown. Really, I want to point this out before we start talking about this. Love the sportsmanship and the great teammate Carson Wentz was cheering on Hurts even though he got benched. You love to see that whenever a teammate, no matter the situation, even if it's not ideal for you, roots on the team. So kudos to Wentz in that aspect. But Brendan, we'll start with you. Is this too late or too early of a start for Hurts? And does he give the Eagles a chance to win the NFC East?
All right, first off, I just noticed that, we're going to have to talk about who we talk about in the NFL from now on. We're talking about the 3 worst teams in the league. Like, I don't know how.
No. Cowboys have the Cowboys are the 3rd worst team. The Eagles are the 4th worst team in football.
Well, thank God we're not talking about the Cowboys.
Here, let me add something real quick. No, go ahead.
No, I'm happy for Jalen Hurts. Loved him at Oklahoma. To get Jeep on, talk about that Oklahoma trilogy that they've got going on right now in the NFL. But it's about time. If Philadelphia really wants Jalen Hurts to be their future, now is the time to do it when you're pretty much out of playoff contention and got 4 games left. Give him some experience before going into the offseason and get him warm for training camp next year, because Carson Wentz just is not the answer. I don't know if they're going to keep Jock Peterson over the offseason. It's time to give Hurts the keys to the car. So, Doug Peterson.
I was like, am I the only one that caught it? I was like, oh, he left the Dodgers.
Sorry, my bad. Doug Peterson. That's how bad he is. Sorry. No.
We're not in the same room, but I feel like me, Jacob, and Ben simultaneously made eye contact there for a second because we all smirked at the same exact moment. Oh, continue, Brendan. Sorry.
No, I think I'm at my point.
Jacob. Oh, too early, too late. NFC East. What's Jalen Hurts doing?
Well, first off, the NFC East, absolutely no chance. I don't care. Like, there's absolutely no chance that Jalen Hurts is going to come in and win the NFC East here. But it's way too late, I think, too, to put him in. I think he should have been starting way before this. I was kind of surprised about how he played against Green Bay. I didn't think he played that bad, honestly.
No.
And really, again, like with how bad Philadelphia's offensive line is, I think that he makes sense because they're so bad they can't keep their quarterback in the pocket, that Jalen Hurts has the ability to get out of the pocket and make some plays happen. So I think he's a better fit in that situation. Is he the long-term answer, though? I'm not entirely sure. That's why I think they should have been looking at him a couple weeks prior, because let's face it, this is just a horrible season for the Eagles. Like, there's nothing that they can get accomplished from this. Carson Wentz is clearly not the answer. So might as well give Jalen Hurts a look. And I think that with as bad as the offensive line is, he can make some plays down the stretch for them potentially.
Yeah. Alex, too early, too late. Eagles NFC East playoff push.
Yeah, I mean, good for the Eagles that they got him, but it's way too late to do anything with this season. I mean, they only have 3 wins. Even if you were to get him 4 perfect games in the NFC East, I just think it's way too late. They should have started a lot earlier if they wanted to have a chance at changing the outcome of this season. But I mean, if he sticks around, who's to say what will happen in the future? I mean, if he plays around for a full season, the Eagles might have a better year, because obviously this was definitely not their year. But yeah, I think it's definitely too late to do anything with this season. I mean, you start him now. I mean, get him some exposure, because they don't really have anything to win. They don't have anything to lose. So they might as well just ride it out, salvage what they can, and look for next year.
Ben.
Yeah, it's probably a little bit too late for them. I mean, if you look at they're about a game and a half out because they have that tie from first. But if you look at the rest of the schedule, the Eagles got the Saints, Cardinals, and then the Cowboys and the Washington football team. So they could probably go 2-2 to finish the season. But the Giants probably going 1-3. I'm saying they got 2 winnable games.
Okay.
I'm not saying they're going to go 2-2. They got 2 games they could win. The Giants only have one because they've got Cleveland, the Baltimore Ravens, Cardinals, and then Dallas. But even then, they'd probably still finish a half a game out. So it's probably over. It's just kind of building them, getting them reps for next year. I think Jalen Hurts is probably the future in Philadelphia. And I mean, you've heard of the elf on the shelf, so here's Wentz on the bench.
Ooh, taking a number from TikTok. Love it. I think it's too late as well. No offense to Wentz. I mean, he has been put in a pretty bad situation. The amount of receivers they've gone through in his tenure, I mean, there's probably 32. If you put all 32 NFL starting receivers this year, that's probably how many wide receivers Wentz has thrown to in his short career. And then they've also started 15 different offensive linemen this year alone. So definitely not the ideal situation, and that's probably leading to a lot of the sacks and such. But at the same time, I don't know. Ever since that ACL tear, he has not been the same guy. So I think it's time to move on. I don't think it gives the Eagles a chance because them and the Giants have two difficult remaining schedules. I think the football team have the best chance at winning just based on the high off of beating the Steelers, which we'll get into, and the fact that their strength schedule remaining, they have 2 to 3 winnable games. So I don't think the Eagles have a chance with Hurts. They have a better chance, but I still don't think the chance is that high. So now we'll talk about playoff implications. Instead of game recaps, we're just going to do games the past weekend that really played a big role in playoff, either seeding, spotting, kicking a team out, putting a team in. So we'll start with the Browns. Browns defeat the Titans 41-35. What a game by Baker Mayfield in that offense. What a first half, I should say. The second half, they kind of tried to just kill the clock, and the defense almost gave it up. The Browns improved to 9-3. Titans fall to 8-4. Who was impacted more by this outcome? Jacob, I'll start with you. Was it the Browns getting the win a bigger impact for the team, or was the Titans losing bigger for the Titans? What do you think?
I think it's the Browns ultimately. They have more of an impact here because I think that it's both a positive impact and a negative impact. Positively, you get a win against a respectable opponent. I mean, that's big for them. But I think it's going to negatively affect them in a way kind of too, because now teams all of a sudden are going to look at them as a threat, and they're going to prepare for them like they're threats. And the media is calling them out like they're Super Bowl contenders. So people are going to want to come after the Browns now even more because they're calling them out now as Super Bowl threats, which I don't think they're a Super Bowl threat. I think that they can maybe be divisional, but I'm not fully convinced on the Super Bowl part because of another point. The defense did look vulnerable in the second half. I understand it was more just to preserve the lead, and they had such a big lead that it really wasn't ever going to be blown. But I think that both in a positive way and a negative way, the Browns were impacted by this outcome.
Jacob, again, Browns are Super Bowl contenders. Do you not do Madden Sims? They win at every Madden Sim. I'm kidding. Alex, who's impacted more by this game?
Jacob raised a really good point that I didn't initially see. Because I agree. I think it is a really positive thing for the Browns. I mean, before this game, I was thinking, because when they had 5 games left, I thought that this game, the Ravens and the Steelers would be their biggest challenges. And then, the 2 New York teams, I don't think they'll be as big of a challenge. But just seeing them win this past week, I thought it was just huge accomplishment for the Browns because I think they just have more of a chance at getting in the playoffs. But now they play the Ravens, and I think the Ravens are going to put up a huge fight with the Browns because I think the Browns have a chance to beat them. I think they initially were a huge team for competition, and now I think that they obviously beat a respectable team, that they're just going to fight even harder. And I think it's going to be a huge, huge brawl for these two. So, I could see your point about it being a negative impact. But as far as the reputation, I mean, the Browns, compared to other years, they're really killing it.
Yeah, 92% chance to make the playoffs now went up from 74% from last week. So, obviously, when you look at that impact, I mean, that's a big impact. Brendan, your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, well, there's still an 8% chance to not make the playoffs.
Gosh. It's the Browns. We're not talking about BYU anymore. Be happy.
But if it's anyone who benefits from this more is that Tennessee and Cleveland right now would face each other in the wild card game in Tennessee. And Cleveland just showed Tennessee what they can put on the field and how they can control them. Mike Vrabel is not going to let that happen to them again. So, I mean, Tennessee benefits from that game in a way. And yes, Cleveland puts themselves in a better position to make the playoffs. But they still have to go on the road for a playoff game. I just think Tennessee is not the team that we saw from them on Sunday, and that they definitely kind of benefit from that game.
Ben, your thoughts on this game, playoff implication-wise?
I think this is huge for the Browns. I mean, Tennessee's still leading their division. They're tied with the Colts at 8-4, so it doesn't really hurt them that much.
No,
they're
they have the tiebreaker too.
What was that?
They have the tiebreaker too, so they're currently the
so they've got
seed.
it. But you look at the Browns now at 9-3. We got a chance to realistically go 11-5 on the season, and there's no way you're going to miss the playoffs at that point. They've got Baltimore, who's actually only favored by 1 point right now for that Monday night game on the 14th. Then they got the Giants, the Jets, and then the Steelers. I mean, realistically, that's 2-2, 11-5, and that's pretty safe. So I think getting that win really puts them in a position where you don't have to reach and get an upset over Baltimore or Pittsburgh to get to that safe 11 wins to get to the playoffs. So I think definitely way much bigger for the Browns. And that's going to be the last take for me. I've got to bounce, got to go get ready for a game, and go get that dub tonight. So
there you go. Good luck.
See you guys.
Yeah, and touch on that point for the Browns. If they do go 11-5, they're slated to be the 5 seed. They would match up with Tennessee, and they'd get to play in good weather most likely again. That's the biggest thing I think for the Browns is we've seen them play in good weather, we've seen them play in bad weather, and they're a much better team when they play in good weather. So if you're the Browns, you're hoping at this point you don't really want to win the AFC North. I think you want to be the road team because you've been playing a little better on the road due to the weather being so bad in Cleveland. If anything, I think this proves the point that the Browns need a dome. But we'll move on to our next game. Rams-Cardinals. Rams looking like the Rams of 2 years ago. They win 38-28, improved to 8-4. Cardinals fall to 6-6, and guys, this is big. They are now 9th in the NFC, or 8th in the NFC, 1 spot out of the playoffs. So they have fallen out right now. But Brendan, I'll start with you. Are the Cardinals falling off from contention at all? Like, do you think this is the end of the Cardinals?
Yeah, well, I mean, they're going to need some little luck to get in now. Not playing their best football of the season at the wrong time, I think. A tough loss to the Rams. I mean, LA is really good, but they need some help in that division. I mean, they play in a tough division. Seattle is in there as well, San Francisco. So, I mean, it's kind of a win-lose scenario for them. The fact that they're playing in that division, I think 6-6 right now. They need at least 3 more wins to get in. They do benefit from Minnesota holding that 7th spot right now, but they just gotta figure out a way to luck out, play better at the right time to get in.
Jacob, Cardinals done?
Yeah, I think as long as Kyler Murray plays like how he has been the past 2 weeks, then they kind of are done. I think personally he has a shoulder injury, and I think that's what's really bothering him. Because we saw in this game, for example, he completes his first pass of the game for 59-yard touchdown. He struggles the rest of the way. So I think it's all going to be on, can Kyler Murray play good again? Can he have his shoulder healthy? Because that offense is really what powers them, I think, to being in the position that they were in. And really, Kyler Murray is a huge part of that offense. So he needs to play better, and he needs to act more of a leader in this situation and really have that shoulder be feeling good, and then I think the Cardinals can potentially get maybe 3 or 4 more wins. I don't really see 4, 3 potentially, and maybe sneak into that last spot.
Alex.
Yeah, I think as far as this year, the Arizona Cardinals might be done. They were close, and I just think it slipped right through their grasp. I mean, they're right there. And it says a lot that they're in one of the best divisions, but just the way they've been playing this year, it just hasn't been their year. So I don't see, unless they have a lot of good luck, the way they've been playing, I don't see anything happening for them this year.
Yeah, looking at the remaining schedule, they should beat the Giants. They should beat the Eagles. San Francisco should be a good game, but I think they should take that ultimately. And then they have the Rams again, who, if they get revenge on, I mean, they'd go 10-6. My favorite part about 4 weeks being in the NFL is the NFL playoff machine always becomes available with 4 weeks left. And I just love plugging in different outcomes and seeing who's going to be making the playoffs if this happens, if that happens. I mean, I had the Denver I found a way for the Denver Broncos to make the playoffs, and they're currently 4-8. So the playoff machine is always fun. It's always to see who's technically still not mathematically eliminated. And right now, I think only one AFC team is, and there's only one NFC team mathematically eliminated, and it's because of that NFC East having everybody there still being mathematically correct there. But the AFC Chargers are eliminated. A couple others, obviously the Jaguars and Jets. I mean, they've been done for weeks. But I think for the Cardinals, every playoff machine I put them in, it seems to have them making it. They should get that final spot. If they beat the Rams, I think them and the Rams both make it, because the Rams should win 2 more of their games. Then at that point, they'd both be 10-6. And I think they'd be 6-7. It all depends on the Buccaneers, too. There's so much implications in that NFC. I think the Bears and Lions are safe to say they're falling off. So I think it's basically Cardinals, Vikings, Buccaneers fighting for those last 2 spots. But if the Cardinals can win those winnable games, which technically is 3 to 4 of their remaining games, they can beat the Rams. They get in. So it's going to be fun to watch. This last 4 weeks has a lot of implications, and we'll get into it as the weeks go on. Washington football team. They end the Pittsburgh Steelers' perfect season with a 23-17 victory. They improved to 5-7, and now them and the Giants remain even for that top spot in the NFC East. Giants have the tiebreaker right now. Steelers fall to 11-1. Are you guys on the Washington football team bandwagon yet for this NFC East? Whoever wants to talk first, go ahead. Who's on the bandwagon with me? The team with no name. Go Washington. Anybody?
Yeah, I want to be, Will. I really do. I want to be, and I think that they have a really good shot, but I got to admit, Colt McCoy pulled off the upset of the season for me when the Giants took down the Seahawks. So I'm starting to believe more in the Giants now, too. I think it's going to be those 2 teams, which is crazy to think about, that those are the 2 teams we're talking about winning the NFC East, if 2020 wasn't crazy enough.
Everybody thinks Cowboys, Eagles. Everybody thinks Cowboys, Eagles, and now it's Giants football team.
It's crazy.
Giants have a legit shot at making the playoffs. I think more so than Washington. You look at the rest of their schedule. Cardinals coming up. That's a tough game. Then the Browns, they can win that one. Baltimore isn't playing that great. And then they finish with Dallas, and that's should be a locked win. So 4 games, I can see 3 wins out of those.
Ultimately, I think the football team might actually have more talent than the Giants, but I think the Giants are playing so good right now that I think that the Giants can easily outplay the football team down the stretch.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at week 14. I have the playoff machine up right now, so I'm going to plug it in just these 2 teams, not every scenario. I think the Cardinals can beat the Giants. I think Washington should beat San Francisco. Seattle should beat Washington. And then I think the Browns are going to beat the Giants ultimately. We'll go week 16. Washington should handle Carolina. And Giants, Baltimore. I'm going to go Baltimore. And then week 17, you have Giants, Cowboys. Giants should get that one. That means they finish 6-10. And then Washington has the Eagles. Even if the Eagles win, Washington's 7-9. I think Washington just has the easier schedule. At this point, I think they both. Yes, I think the Giants might be the more talented team, but I think they're going to get shafted a bit here at the end by the fact that their schedule is a little more difficult. They have both the Browns and the Ravens, making it difficult on them.
That Browns game got flexed on Sunday night, by the way.
Yeah, it got moved. But I mean, the Browns know the Giants and the Jets are the 2 games that they must win, and I don't see them losing those games. So I'm jumping on the bandwagon Washington football team. That very young defense, fun to watch. And Alex Smith is my comeback player of the year right now. I mean, there was this. I saw this on Twitter. Anyone that says Big Ben is the comeback player of the year, show them this picture. And it was a picture of his knee, like, post-surgery, or not his knee, his whole leg post-surgery. And, oh my gosh, the fact that man's playing football at a high level blows my mind. Again, the fact that he's playing again. And winning.
Yeah, when Alex Smith, when he threw that first pass of the season, he already won Comeback Player of the Year in my eyes. That's all he had to do, just get back on the field.
That was bad. So kudos to Alex Smith, and the fact that he's leading the football team too. I mean, I shouldn't say a good season because 5-7's not good, but to Dwayne Haskins also didn't start him off well. I mean, Dwayne Haskins was pretty atrocious through the first few weeks, but the fact that they're sitting at 5-7 and a chance to make the playoffs, Alex Smith's my comeback player of the year. There's no doubt in my mind. So, Alex, anything to add on the football team and the Steelers?
No, I think I'm on the bandwagon too. I mean, I don't know. I know the Giants have had the capability to be good, but right now I don't think they're anything to write home about. So I'd say I'm hopping on the bandwagon too.
There we are. So we'll look at the playoff picture now. Steelers still remain atop, have the tiebreakers over the Chiefs. The Chiefs have clinched, though, the only AFC team to clinch, as they're both 11-1. Bills 9-3, got the 3 spot. Titans 8-4. Hold on to that tiebreaker over the Colts for the AFC South on the 4 spot. 3 wildcard teams, the 9-3 Browns, 8-4 Dolphins, and 8-4 Colts. Looking in, the 7-5 Raiders, 7-5 Ravens, and the Patriots 6-6 on a little bit of a surge here towards the back end of the season, hoping that their playoff hopes can stay alive. Looking at the NFC, the Saints 10-2 have the top spot. They clinched as well, as Taysom Hill looking like he could be the real deal, succeeding Drew Brees. Green Bay Packers have the 2 spot at 9-3. Rams 8-4 have the 3 spot, have the tiebreaker over the Seahawks due to head-to-head. And the Giants the 4 spot right now at 5-7. Then the Seahawks at 8-4, Buccaneers 7-5, and Vikings 6-6 are the wild card teams right now. The Vikings, we talked about them when they were 2-5. We all agreed they're better than their 2-5 record shows. Dalvin Cook comes back, lights the world on fire. They're now 4-1 since we discussed that 2-5 record, and they have the tiebreaker over the Cardinals. Looking in from the outside, the 6-6 Cardinals, 5-7 Bears, 5-7 Lions, 5-7 49ers, and then obviously the football team and the other NFC counterparts looking in. Falcons and Panthers technically not eliminated as well, but not looking good. So, Jacob, I'll start with you. Who could you see falling out of the race over the next 4 weeks? Who in the hunt do you see making a late push? Or do you see this being pretty matching up with what the playoffs will be?
I really don't know who's going to really fall out of the race. I guess you can say that Giants could potentially, because Washington can come in and take over for them. I think that also Minnesota could potentially fall out because Arizona could potentially sneak back in. So really, those are my teams in the hunt. My team in the hunt is Arizona in the NFC. AFC, I still have this feeling that Baltimore is going to get in there. I don't know who's going to come out, though, of the AFC in that sense, because the Dolphins, I think, are pretty securely in there, which is shocking for me to say. I would have never thought I would have said that at the beginning of the year, but I think they're going to make the playoffs. And the Colts, I have a hard time saying they're going to fall out of the playoffs too, and even the Titans in a sense too. So I really don't know who Baltimore is going to come in place of, but I still have this feeling that Baltimore could potentially make that push. So yeah, I just think it's going to be crazy the last couple of weeks. I'm really excited to see what's going to happen.
For the Dolphins, the only thing that worries me is their remaining schedule is Kansas City, New England, who's been playing well, Vegas, and Buffalo. That's a tough.
Well, I think they can beat New England and Vegas.
So
I think it's a
10-6.
toss-up between Buffalo. Very toss-up. I think that they're doomed against Kansas City, in my opinion. But I don't know. I just have this feeling they're going to make.
If they can just win 2 of those, though, then they're forcing Baltimore to win 3 of their last 4.
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
I mean, it's going to be, like you said, a fun ride. Alex, your thoughts on the playoff picture as of right now? What changes do you see, if any?
Honestly, I see some changes happening to the Giants. I mean, I don't know. Just something tells me between the way they have been playing and who they will be playing in the next 4 weeks, I see them slipping. And I don't know, if they slip enough, maybe then and only then would Arizona have even the slightest chance of going up in the ranks. But that's kind of what I see. Kind of like everyone said, this is going to be really interesting. A lot's going to be happening in the next 4 weeks. And kind of like I had mentioned earlier, I think the Ravens are going to put up a huge fight against the Browns this weekend. I mean, like I said earlier, before this Sunday, I thought that the Browns and the Ravens, I thought they would be one of their bigger challenges compared to the two New York teams, and then you'd have the Steelers. But I feel like on top of that, and then now the Browns are going up. They just got another win. I see the Ravens, they're going to put up a huge fight. And I think that'll be a really interesting game to see because I think the Browns had the capability to beat the Ravens, but just between the level of competition and their urge to try to make that last push, I think that'll be a really interesting game to watch.
Brendan.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be tough, I think, for any of the outside teams, the AFC, to get in. Like I said, I mean, if the Dolphins lose to Vegas, that helps the Raiders. I think Baltimore, this coming week against Cleveland is do or die for them. I don't think the Patriots have a chance to get in. But I mean, I think it's pretty much locked in right now. I think it's just however those 5, 6, and 7 teams situate themselves. I think if Cleveland loses to Baltimore or New York or Pittsburgh, that puts them down at 7, which isn't great for them. But in the NFC, I think it's also kind of locked. I think the only 2 races that you're looking at then is the Giants and Washington, and whoever can get that 7 seed, which I think is between Minnesota and Arizona. So, I mean, you're kind of getting into the season right now where everything's locked, people are clinching, and everything's kind of falling into place.
Yeah, I look at it right now. Again, I'm going to go to the playoff machine because it's fun to play with. If Arizona beats New York and Minnesota beats Tampa Bay, which they could, Tampa Bay would fall out. Minnesota and Arizona have the 6-7. You go to week 15. Arizona can beat Philadelphia. Minnesota plays Chicago, which is definitely winnable. And then Tampa Bay has the Falcons, which they should win, so everything would hold. Week 16 then, Minnesota has the Saints. It's going to be a tough one. We'll go Saints there. And then you look at the Cardinals. They should beat the 49ers. And then the Buccaneers, they have the Lions, should win. So Tampa Bay would take over for the Vikings. So it would be the 9-6 Bucs, the 9-6 Cardinals. And then week 17, Buccaneers, Falcons. So the Buccaneers should get that 10th win. Rams should beat the Cardinals. If the Rams beat the Cardinals again, that opens the room up for the Vikings to beat the Lions and get that 7th spot. And I'm not all the way sold on Tampa Bay. They could have a bad game against one of these games against Arizona or something because they've proven when Tom Brady doesn't play well, they're not a powerhouse. So I think even that last spot, I could see the Vikings-Cardinals taking over and Buccaneers being left out. The NFC is going to be a wild push for those last 2 spots between those 3 teams. I think Seahawks are safe to say, yeah, they had a loss against the Giants, but I think they're safe to say that they're in. And then in Washington, New York will be fun to watch. Always going to root for the football team. I think the only way that the Ravens get in or Raiders get in is Dolphins' difficult schedule. And if the Raiders can beat the Dolphins too, that'd be a big thing for the Raiders. But it's going to be fun. Final 4 weeks. These extra spots are proving to be fun. It's providing more of a race, and we already had good races previous years, so it's exciting as we look at week 14 this upcoming week. We have some big matchups going on, some big playoff implications. Brendan, I'll start with you. What's some of your favorite matchups this weekend?
Obviously, Baltimore and Cleveland. I'll be there.
You'll be there.
I will be there. Cardinals and Giants is an interesting one. Both teams need a win to keep their seasons alive. Vikings and Buccaneers, same thing. Matchup of that 6 and 7 seed, trying to battle it out, stay alive in the playoff push. And then the Steelers and Bills is an interesting one. If the Bills can beat the Steelers and Browns beat the Ravens, that keeps Cleveland alive for that AFC North title, which is a long shot, but anything can happen, obviously.
Jacob.
Yeah, Brendan took the games that I had picked out right away from me. So the other games that I want to see, they're kind of weird, but Jets, Seahawks. Let's see how the Jets can blow it this week. And also, the weird thing is, though, the Seahawks kind of need to win this game, kind of to stay in the NFC West picture. So really, it's actually a big game for the Seahawks, and it's a big game for the Jets, obviously, because can they keep just losing? And I'm a big Stephen A. Smith guy. I love seeing his Twitter videos, just making fun of the Cowboys. So can the Cowboys actually lose to the Bengals? That's what I want to see, too. Those are just my two little weird games of the week, then.
Alex, your games of the week.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to see the Jets go for another loss. But anyway, I'd say my two big games were obviously Cleveland and the Ravens. And I would also have to say the Cardinals and the Giants, because they both need that, like to either climb or slip. But going back to my point about the Browns and the Ravens, I think that's going to be my game of the week. Huge, huge game, because I think the Browns definitely need this. Because if they can win this game, and then if they could win against both New York, in my opinion, their biggest challenge after this is going to be the Steelers. But after that, I think they're locked in completely for the playoffs. So I think this is going to be a big game for them.
I want to say, I thought I saw something that if the Browns beat the Ravens, they clinch. But I can't remember. I think they clinch with...
Earliest they can clinch is the Giants game.
No. I thought I saw if they win and the Raiders lose this week, they could clinch.
Maybe I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe I saw something wrong, but that Browns-Ravens game is going to be huge. Obviously, Bills Steelers, like you said. I'm also looking out for the 6-6 teams that are still in the hunt. Patriots at the Rams. That's a big one for the Pats. Cardinals, Giants, the big one for both of them. Giants trying to hold pace in the NFC East, while the Cardinals trying to get that 7th spot back. Vikings, Buccaneers, a big one. Those are currently the 6 and 7 seeds. So I think there's a lot on the line this week specifically. The playoff picture, we look at it now, it could be completely different next week, and it's going to continue to change as these last 4 weeks play out. But that is it for the NFL, as that takes us to last call. So we have a couple of fun questions here. Obviously, I'm pretty sure all of us watched the Browns game. Touchdown celebrations were in full swing. So if you were to score a touchdown in the NFL, Alex, I'll start with you. What would be your go-to touchdown celebration?
Oh, gosh, I'm not sure. Can you come back to me on this one? I have to think about it a little bit.
Of course. Jacob, what are you doing? You doing a little, getting cold cuts, or what are we doing?
Well, first off, I'd want to do a one-handed touchdown grab back of the end zone, Baker Mayfield throwing it over to me. That'd be the dream right there for the touchdown. But then I would go back to The Office and do, the Michael Scarn dance. I'd do the Michael Scarn dance there. Adam Thielen pulled it out last year, and it was amazing. So I'd have to take it from him and do that just because I love The Office so much.
Jump to the right and you shake that hand. New friends, that's some young. That's how you do this, guy. Brendan, what are you doing?
I'm down for anything that includes the whole team. I liked, was it Juju Smith-Schuster a couple weeks ago? Had the birthday cake. They all sang happy birthday. The campfire one is a classic. They all gather around the football. Was it Monmouth basketball a couple years ago that went viral for all their celebrations?
Yeah.
They had a bunch of ones, like rowing in the boat, playing baseball with invisible bat is a good one too. Anything that includes the whole team is a blast for me.
Alex, can we get a thought of?
Yeah, I completely forgot about the campfire. I would say that one would be my go-to, just having the team with the campfire. I think that'd be so much fun. And Jacob brought up The Office, let's bring up SpongeBob with the campfire and do the campfire song. Oh my God, that would be so funny. But I'd say that would be my go-to.
Jacob kind of took mine in a way. I was thinking Office and general Michael Scott dances throughout the whole series. The scarring obviously included in that. Whatever touchdown I score, maybe go a different Michael Scott dance. Walking down the aisle to Jim and Pam's wedding, or when they're in the little office that was the Michael Scott Paper Company, and they're like having a club out of it. Just like little dances like that throughout the whole series that make Michael who Michael is. But I was thinking Office too as I was watching Office last night, making the script. So me and you on the same page there, Jacob. Riley left, so I had to jump on and look at your homework here. So now we'll go to sports movie. As obviously as it gets colder, movies are more fun to watch. We'll go to sports movie and Christmas movie to round things out. Brendan, I'll start with you. What's your go-to sports movie at any given moment, and your go-to Christmas movie?
Sports movie. I love any of the ones that Kevin Costner is in. He does a bunch of sports movies, specifically baseball. So Field of Dreams is good. What's the one where he's playing for the Tigers?
I'm not sure.
Never mind. But Draft Day is good.
Oh, Draft Day is good. Yeah.
Can't forget Major League. Rudy. But I think Christmas one. I've been watching a lot of obscure Christmas movies that are on Hulu and Netflix. I just watched Happiest Season on Hulu. I recommend. It's pretty good. But then can't go wrong with Elf. So
okay,
yep.
Alex, your go-to sports movie and Christmas movie.
So for my favorite sports movie, it's one of the less serious ones, I suppose, but it mixes my two favorite things, which are comedy and golf. Caddyshack is one of my go-tos. I love that movie so much. I could see that movie 100 times and laugh like I've seen it for the first time. I love that movie so much. Like I said, one of the less serious ones, one of the less motivational ones, but just, it cracks me up so much. And I guess in the spirit of comedy, one of my favorite Christmas movies, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation.
Okay. Again,
I can watch that movie so many times. I watch it every single year, and Cousin Eddie makes me laugh like I'm seeing it for the first time. I love comedies. Those two are some of my favorite movies. And yeah, especially like you said with the getting cold out, getting cozy and just having some laughs.
Jacob, where are you going?
So if I'm going serious sports movie, it's probably Hoosier. I really love Hoosier. That's a great old school movie. That was one of the first sports movies my dad showed me, and I just really love the story of it. But my favorite sports movie's got to be Space Jam, and it's just because I idolize Michael Jordan. Like, he is just the top guy for me. So it's just awesome to see him there, and guys like Charles Barkley in there too, Patrick Ewing. Like, it's just awesome if you're a really big NBA fan to watch all those guys in one movie. So I really enjoyed that as a kid. And then my Christmas movie, my family absolutely adores Elf, and I love Elf too. That's just a classic. But my favorite movie is A Christmas Story. Like, I just love that movie, between licking the pole, getting his tongue stuck, shoot your eye out, the dogs running in and stealing Christmas dinner, and then they have to go to the Chinese restaurant. I mean, there's just so many classics.
Yeah.
I just love that movie. Kid.
Yeah. Brendan looks upset.
What?
You look upset, Brendan.
It's the dumbest movie ever.
Who thought we'd get...
It's the one thing I hate about Cleveland. Like, we're so famous for the Christmas Story house. Like,
it's amazing.
Who thought we'd get heated?
I don't get it.
There'd be heat in the last call for Christmas movies.
I don't find it funny. I mean, it's a classic. I'm not, taking away from it. It's a classic, but I don't find it funny.
There is a house in my development that has the lamp in their window.
Nice.
Like, the light lamp, in their window. And every time I drive past it, I start cracking up because it's like, oh my gosh. You said, the one thing Cleveland's known for, but it's hysterical.
Yep. My go-to sports movie, funny-wise, is probably Major League. I love Major League. 1 and 2. The third one's eh. But
There's a third one?
Yeah, it's Back to the Minors. It's pretty bad.
Exactly. It's horrible.
But, my go-to sports movie overall, though, is probably Rudy. Every time I watch that movie, I feel like, man, I'm gonna walk to I'm gonna go to Notre Dame for law school. So I'm just gonna walk in and be like, I want to go to Notre Dame, and it never happens. But I get all the motivation in the world. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna do this. Usually doesn't happen, but it's good for motivation, and it's also I love it in the sense like, I mean, I cry every time his best friend dies, but
Me too.
such a good movie. For Christmas movie, my go-to, this is probably a very underrated pick. A lot of people don't pick this movie, but Fred Claus is probably my go-to Christmas movie with Vince Vaughn.
It's a good one.
I think it's really funny. And then I love the little kid. I'm gonna name him Macaroni, like when he gets the puppy. It's one of my favorite scenes when he. But I love Fred Claus. That's probably my go-to Christmas. Either that or the Santa Claus. You know, gotta love Tim Allen's Santa Claus. So, but anything you guys want to add before we wrap up episode 6 of RaiderZone? No.
Get Ohio State out of the playoff. Put Cincinnati or Coastal Carolina in.
Okay. We'll see if the committee hears this one out. I'll send it to them. I'll send them the link. But no. So thank you again, everybody that listens to this. This was episode 6 of RaiderZone. For Brendan Devaney, Alexander Petrone, Jacob Utar, I'm Will Brianza, and everybody have a wonderful day. And as always, go Raiders.